To call to order the Tuesday, November 12th, 2013 regular meeting for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. We will begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Cash.
Please stand. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Para los miembros del público que gusten escuchar esta reunión en español, tenemos interpretación al español disponible.
Thank you. We also have headsets available for anyone that requires them for the hearing impaired. We will begin our meeting with introductions, proclamations, presentations, and recognitions. Dr. Cash.
Well, first I'd like to introduce our student representative. It's Tabby Magner from Dos Pueblos High School, and she's going to give the report. And Tabby's mom is Heather Magner, the librarian at Dos Pueblos High School. So welcome, Tabby. Go right up to the podium.
All right, I'm giving the report for Alta Vista, La Cuesta, Santa Barbara High School, and Dos Pueblos. Alta Vista independent study students have been participating in Santa Barbara's Big Read, joining community members in reading The Things They Carried. Activities include attending community lectures and an art project with the Museum of Art. Alta Vista Middle College students just completed working on the Antigone project at Santa Barbara City College, which included essay writing and corresponding art projects. Alta Vista Quetzal students have been attending a variety of field trips, including trips to Santa Cruz Island, UCSB, and the Goleta Sanitation District. In addition, students from the two Quetzal sites participated in the Museum of Art Dia de los Muertos project and had their art and poetry displayed in the front of the museum gift shop. All Alta Vista programs are coming together to participate in the new Sustainable Garden Club. At La Cuesta has held a series of events to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, including student presentation of sculpture and poetry at the Museum of Art, creation of life-size calaveras by physics students, and assembly featuring son harco music and contemplating in a celebration at lunch on November 1st. La Cuesta annual Teens for Jeans events kick off next week. All jeans collected will be donated to NOAA, a local adult shelter. The La Cuesta class is holding a car wash at the Boys and Girls Club on Canon Perdido this Saturday, November 16th, and tickets for that will be available at the La Cuesta office. For Santa Barbara High School, their fall musical Chicago ran the last 2 weekends and sold out many nights. It was said to be a very impressive show, and the amount of talent was very great at the high school level. They recently had an awesome Spirit Week and pep rally on November 1st to get their school pumped and ready for the football game against SM that they then won. They're having a Movember competition. It's a No Shave November competition that is raising money for men's health research. The girls' tennis at SB went to CIF quarterfinals. Girls' volleyball has the first round of CIF tonight, and they were Channel League champs. And Ruth Hunter is going to CIF for cross country. Principal John Becchio has a huge birthday this Saturday. So, for Dos Pueblos, in the area of sports, we have boys water polo who got the league title over San Marcos. Our girls golf team also won the Channel League championships. Both cross-country teams, boys and girls, swept the every Channel League race this season, and they're both going to CIF this next Saturday. The girls' volleyball season came to an end after a loss to Santa Barbara, sad. Katie Yang and Casey Edgar are two doubles team tennis girls that are lined up to win Channel League. around campus, we had recently Tim O'Brien, the author of the acclaimed novel, The Things They Carried. He came and spoke to us in our EPAC 2 weeks ago, and that was pretty cool since we were reading his book for the big Santa Barbara read, and it was cool to have the author. We got to like talk to him, ask questions and stuff, so that was pretty awesome. And a student traffic committee is being formed at DP, and we have many blood drives and canned food drives starting in this next month. There's a new writing center open on November 14th, so students around campus can get help writing if they need it from other students that are doing well in English classes. The fall play is this weekend and was last weekend as well, I'm pretty sure. And we also sold out our opening night, so that's good. You guys should all go see it. And the PTSA meeting led to an approval of a safe driving education course for students, so that's pretty cool. And our website also has been changed from dphs.org to www.dospuebloshighschool.org, so that's kind of important if you're looking up our website. All right, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tabby. Today was Junior Achievement Day at Adams Elementary School. Volunteers from local banks and the community entrepreneurs taught business skills to students in grades 3 through 6. Great opportunity for the students to see the connection between real-life business skills at each of those grade levels. We have several events taking place this Thursday. First is Stand Tall, which is an important part of our curriculum in our elementary schools. It's a free workshop on teaching respect and preventing bullying. And the author Suzanne Peck will be there, and it takes place at 5:30 at Antioch University. Also on Thursday, also on Thursday is Gate Parent Night, which will be from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at Franklin Elementary School. And as Tabby noted, our high school theater projects are in full swing, and the next production approaching Zanzibar at San Marcos High School begins Thursday. Our students are doing a stellar job, and we encourage all of the public to attend, and theater flyers again are in the back of the room. Coming in December, She Stoops to Conquer, a sheltered theater production at San Marcos High School, takes place, and the dates are December 12th through the 15th, and that is under the direction of teacher Phil Levian, and it's taking place in his theater classroom I-10, and he's been doing that for years. And this concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board's comments or correspondence? Mr. Herron?
Actually, what happens between meetings, to me, is far more important and fun than being up here during these meetings. This past 3 weeks, things like, and I'll take a little bit more time this time, the Santa Barbara Dance Institute had 3 performances of 3 schools, but I went to the one at Harding, and to see 20, 25 kids dancing, smiling, happy, collaborating, learning, creative, is really a sight to behold. I went to the Dia de los Muertos Celebration by Adelante down at the De La Guerra Plaza area, and again, same thing, 5 hours of just pure fun with parents galore, enjoying themselves on that day. Very well organized, very well done. I went to the AOK yearly update where Ms. Badger presented her 3-year plan. We'll look back what happened last year and then with the 3-year plan, and there were representatives of every community organization that's involved with AOK, which is tremendous, but they really have accomplished a lot and still have a lot thing on their plate for the next 3 years. Went to the Wellness Committee talking about good food and good health and good activity, and looking for the Day of Wellness coming up at all the schools. I went to the Adelante board meeting representing the board, and did provide the staff with 3 months of minutes, so to get us all in tune to what's going on, and those minutes are on the website. They're working very hard because their charter comes up for renewal first part of the year, so they're really breaking it down in segments and are working hard at it. A big day at McKinley for Flag Day, and we just had the flag Pledge of Allegiance, and with 450 kids out on the lawn with 3 Marines showing how to raise the flag, how to fold the flag, a bugler playing the raise the flag. How many know what the 3 colors on the flag stand for? Anybody want to raise their hand? You know, what's the blue and the stars called? You know, these 450 kids at McKinley now know. So it's educational, fun to see all these kids waving that flag was just tremendous. Went to the inclusion meeting by the special ed department where they talked a lot about how to have inclusion into the classrooms. Was involved with Ms. Parker on the facilities interviews for a new master plan on facilities, and there's a recommendation tonight on the results of that committee and those interviews. Went on a vision tour at Santa Barbara Charter. Second time in 5 years I've been on the campus. Again, I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I saw what was going on. It was eye-opening. I loved the junior high wood shop. I had never seen that before. That was a byproduct of the tour. It's fantastic. Unfortunately, spent the weekend because of a community problem at La Cumbre. La Cumbre has a drum corps, and it's different than a band. A drum corps basically learns to play one set of beats, and every day, during the day, they have drum classes. And Monday was the first time that all 50 drummers got together at the same time for 5 hours to practice their drum beat for the parade coming up for Christmas. We all can agree that's a great experience. It's a great to see the kids out there for 5 hours practicing. Unfortunately, some of the neighbors didn't care for it too much. But you know, I think Dr. Andrade is working through that, and I appreciate. I mean, I think we take it seriously. But in reality, there's problems with the drum corps practicing any place, you know. So, but it was great. I mean, the policeman came, you know, and I happened to be there, and which was good. And I didn't call him, you know, but the neighbors did, and I just happened to be there at the same time. But he put it in perspective. He said, you know, the Santa Barbara Bowl, we have the same problem. You know, every time there's a music performance. And so he also said, isn't it better to have these 50 kids here on a holiday practicing for 5 hours than out on the streets? You know, so everything has to be put in perspective, and I feel for the neighbors, but I hope this is a passing thing and we can work around that. So those are the kinds of things that happen between meetings, and that's the fun part of this job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. Any other board correspondence or feedback? Great. All right. Announcement of closed session action. I do want to note that item B3, conference with labor negotiator, was pulled. As such, there is no reportable announcements for closed session. Ms. Parker, do we have any general public comment?
We do not.
All right, so we will move to acceptance of donations.
I move they be accepted with gratitude.
Thank you, Mr. Herron.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Idelson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes 5-0. Next, we have the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that the board would like to see pulled? Mr. Herron?
I'd like to pull the September 24th meeting. I have one minor amendment to that.
All right.
And then I'd also just like to mention the retirement of David Holmes that's in the Human Resources. He's been in charge of the musical productions at San Marcos for 29 or 30 years, does a fantastic job, and I'm sorry to see him retire, but I wish him the best for his future. And retirement not until the end of the school year, so he hasn't retired yet.
Thank you, Mr. Herron.
I'll move to approve the remainder of the consent agenda. This is less the item E4, September 24th, 2013 minutes specifically.
Thank you, Ms. Parker.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Buss. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 5-0. And we'll take the September 24th meetings at the end, or would you like to take those now?
I'm
Mr.
trying to
Hearn?
look for my
Okay.
amendment, so let's wait at the end.
Okay, so we'll take those at the end. We will move on to section action agenda items, section G, and we will start with approval of the school occupational therapist proposal and job description.
Have both Dr. Christensen and Mr. Rodriguez will present this.
Good evening, everyone. I've got the first portion, and then Helen will have the tough part, the fiscal analysis, to present to you, and then I'll wrap up with our recommendations. Tonight, the discussion for action is for the occupational therapy services for the 2014-15 school year. The district is proposing to provide occupational therapy services in-house beginning with the 2014-15 school year. When districts reassume responsibility for county programs, Education Code Section 44903.7 requires districts to also absorb county employees. The Special Education Department estimates a 3.0 FTE requirement when additional planned student assessments are taken into account. Occupational therapists are in high demand. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, employments of OTs is expected to increase 26% between 2008 and 2018. In conversation with County HR Assistant Superintendent Al Zanana, he also reports difficulties in finding occupational therapists. Excuse me. As you may know, occupational therapists are classified, not certificated employees. They are 10-month employees who work the regular school year. We may have to make some adjustments for our year-round school. We are recommending to the board tonight that an equivalent placement on the salary schedule between ranges 64 and 68. Given the shortage of OTs, this would provide us with some flexibility should the county not get the volunteers to come to us, or the people, if we don't get any volunteers, then we would be in a situation where we would have to offer the position to the least senior county employees. If they fail to accept the position, then they would be laid off, and then we would have to recruit from the outside. So approving this range in the salary schedule would provide us possibly with incentive to recruit for this very difficult to fill specialty. Because we do not have currently an OT position in the classified contract, the position description and the addition of the position at the appropriate range requires bargaining. If the board approves the position description and return of the program, we will then be in a position to bargain with CSEA. And just in terms of process, the county will seek volunteers for transfers, as I indicated earlier, and if that doesn't work, the least senior will be offered positions. Additionally, the district is required by Education Code to do two things. First of all, we're required to send another letter to the county indicating our final intent to reassume responsibility for the program. And secondly, the district is also required to hold a meeting, and that would be Mrs. Rodriguez and myself would call a meeting. The meeting would be designed for parents and for potential employees from the county. The Special Education Department would have to talk about the transfer of services and how that would impact students, and then we would be available to answer any questions from employees. So that meeting is required by Education Code, and we will both be working closely with our county to make sure that all the deadlines are met and that we hold the requisite meetings. So I'm going to be followed by Mrs. Rodriguez, who will talk about the fiscal analysis, and then I'll come back with the final recommendations.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening. Last board meeting, you had some questions, and you asked if I could show you per grade level how many students that we would be taking back. So I'd like to explain this chart. If you, for example, look at the columns grade direct OT services, that means that the OT will provide those direct services. Then you have a column where it's consult. Those are students that our OT will consult with the teacher or whomever. The SALPA has a policy, and the policy is that for every 2 consult, that is equivalent to 1 direct service. And that's important to note because that's how we determine caseloads for our OT staff. So what we did is we showed you the number of students. If you see the total on students, 8 that are receiving direct services in kindergarten, And we took the 3 consult and converted according to the SALPA policy, which would be 1.5 students. And so for kindergarten, that'd be a total of 9.5 students. So the total column is what is very important to us. That is going to determine how many students that an OT staff member would have on their caseload, which would be from 20 to 30. So if you look at the bottom, it says 76.5 students is equivalent to 2.55 OT staff. But we are also including with the 3 FTEs of those initials that we will be receiving. So we're anticipating that. With that, you also asked how many students that we are going to leave with the county, and this is the chart that shows how many students that the county will end up providing services, 25.5. So do you have questions over this chart?
Mr. Herron?
Yeah, my question from last time, the 25.5, do we pay for those?
Yes, we do.
And is that in your calculations about savings, costs minus expenses equals savings?
Yes. Actually, I was working with Meg Jate, and right now it's currently costing us about $3,042 per student. So you multiply that 25.5 by 3,042, that will give you the cost of...
And what is that number, Meg? Oh. 75,000?
Yeah.
It's about 78,000. But what I did is I compared...
Microphone, please.
No, I can't.
Is there another one that works?
Is that, there we go.
Thank you.
So what I did is, when the analysis for the cost of the savings of $49,000 for the first year is just based on those 99 kids we're taking back, and the 25 remain at the county, their status quo. So I compared 99 at the county to 99 at how we would do it at Santa Barbara.
Okay. Oh, you talk about 2 consults equal 1 student, and that's how you're going to divide the workload.
Yes.
Have you looked at how many minutes each of those students require in their IEPs?
No, and that's separate. You have caseloads and then you have service minutes. And just to go back, the 99 that was given to us came from the county when we were collaborating with them, and Kathy Breen did provide, she projected about 99 students. So then we did our own research and we're projecting it's close to that. So when the students come to us, if it's consult, it could be maybe 1 time a month for 10 minutes. We're not sure. It depends on the student, and this is case by case. And of course, it's dictated by the IEP team and their recommendations.
Thank you.
So with the chart, now that you understand how many FTEs we are requesting, as Meg had shared, for 3 occupational therapists at $71,449, that would be a total of $214,347, plus the 20% benefits, that's an additional $75,593, which is a total of $289,940. And there was a question about the equipment. Again, it's case by case. We cannot predict the type of the equipment that the student will require. And it could be from simple as a program in handwriting without tiers, or it could be something where it's very complicated, where we have some kind of processing device or iPads or program that works with the Wii. So it depends on the needs of the child. So what we have to do is we have to kind of project how much equipment that we may need. We could not use any of the money because some of our severely handicapped children will probably qualify for low incidence. Or we may have a child that moves into our district and probably have an expense of $60,000 or $70,000. So it depends. It depends on the needs of the child. So hopefully that answers your question with why we're budgeting the $50,000 as equipment. And yes, it is part of the expense. And yes, we have to budget something every year. But it does not say that we may have to use all that money.
Ms. Parker?
Can I just jump in with the questions on the equipment, and that is is there going to be a physical space for occupational therapy? Like, I know that the county has an occupational therapy room where students can come to it for certain types of equipment. Is there going to be something like that for us, or will we still be using the county room, or are those the students that stay with the county? That's my question,
Yes.
I guess.
The profound severe students will be remaining with the county, and yes, they have equipment in the room, and those are the students that would qualify for low incidence. The type of students that we are taking back, they're currently at our school sites, and the occupational therapist comes to the classroom and works in the classroom with the student as instruction is occurring. And they usually collaborate with the teachers and ensuring that whatever the therapy is coincides with the lesson that's occurring at that time. So with the 50,000, it's a total of 339,940. So for the first year savings, we're looking at 49,461, and second year savings will be 99,461.
And this, I mean, there's no pilot program. So this is like we're going full blown. And so if in a year from now we realize we really don't have the capacity, whatever the capacity is, there's not really a turning back point at that point.
No, there isn't. Where our goal is, and it's part of the FICMAC goal, is that we would enhance our services and provide services to our own students. And we recognize that the severe students, that we are not prepared to provide those services. So what we're doing is basically taking the mild to moderate students who are in our programs currently, and it's just a matter of changing service providers. It's instead of the county hiring their OT, we'll have our own OT. And then we'll be able to work together more in a more of a collaborative way, as far as the OT will be able to be a part of our team, actually, instead of coming and visiting the campus. And there is a difference with that. That way that our staff can work with our teachers or work with the instructional assistants in providing the services and actually working with the parents. And it would be under our responsibility and direction.
Okay. I guess that one of the concerns I have is that, I mean, even in this presentation, it's been brought up multiple times, the difficulty in hiring for that position. So part of me is worried about what happens if we can't fill the positions, because the need's still going to be there, and we've changed the model. And that's the piece that, I mean, is hard to kind of do guesswork of, well, what's going to happen in a year from now? But it's something that I'm really thinking about.
I can tell you what the county does, because they're shorthanded every year. What they end up doing is having to contract. So actually, we're contracting with them, and they're contracting out. If that should arise, and it has happened with our speech therapists, we normally research, and we control the contract. We give the expectations of what we would like them to do for our students, and they help us find a qualified staff member.
Thank you. Mr. Herron?
The preschool, 11 direct, 11 consults for 16.5. Now, next year, that's 13, 14. Next year, they'll be in kindergarten. Do they stay with the county? Do those 16.5 stay with the county?
Yes, they are the severe students.
Right. So
yes,
they're not coming into our kindergartens?
No.
Okay. What about forms and practices and policies? Are we having to create all of that, applications, or will we create our own processes?
We will have our own procedure of referring. In fact, Debbie Grant, she's overseeing the OT, and she's very familiar with that process. And in fact, she has already created a referral process for AT, and she will be creating a referral process for OT.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Board? Ms. Parker?
Well, just that, especially without the minutes analysis going down to that level, I do feel like this is you know, it's an estimate, it's going to remain an estimate, especially with changing students. This is sort of a best guess in terms of any cost savings. I do think it's important for us to focus instead on providing better service, because it may not come down to saving us any money whatsoever. But I do appreciate what you're saying about the need to better integrate the OTs with our own special ed team. And if our staff feels that that's going to provide better services to students, then I will respect that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is not a cost issue. It's the best service possible for our students, and if cost ever comes into it, I want to know about it.
This is all about really responding to the FICMAT recommendations, providing a continuum of services, our district providing a continuum of services. So I think it was stated well that it's trying to create a more cohesive team with our kids.
Okay. All right. I welcome a motion if there is one.
I make the motion to approve this school occupational therapist proposal and job description.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are moving to acceptance of the 2011-2012 annual report on statutory school fees, developer fees for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. Mr. Hettenjunk.
Yeah, David. Mr. Hettenjunk will take both these next three items.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. The Government Code section requires that we make information available to the public within 180 days of the close of a school year. And in preparing the report for 2012-13, I noticed that the report for 2011-2012 was not formally brought before the board. It was available for public to come in and view records or ask questions, but it wasn't formally presented where you could accept the report. In fact, the code doesn't require you to accept it. It's just traditionally the way this district has brought the report forward for public viewing. So I would ask that you review, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address those concerning the 2011-2012 expenditure of our statutory school fees.
Thank you, Mr. Hettenjunk. Board, any questions or comments? As Mr. Hettenjunk said, it's an item that's supposed to regularly come forward to us in public meeting. It did come to us. I do remember seeing the figures. I just don't think it came to us publicly in this past year.
Well, it looks straightforward to me, so I'll move to approve or move to accept the 2011-12 annual report on statutory school fees.
Thank you, Ms. Parker.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Idelson. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to acceptance of 2012-2013 annual report on statutory school fees for the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
Thank you again. Board members, I would like to make one change to my document. There are some bullet points for recommendations for future use of funds, and I left off one item. I'm also recommending that future funds be used to address some structural issues that we have with the theater rigging system at Santa Barbara High School. We have a engineer's report, and we'll be coming forward soon with a proposal for a design.
Will that be coming to us just, I mean, will you actually be modifying the document, or are you just like?
No. Well, I would prefer to modify the document and have it on record that that bullet point is in there, so the board is aware of the intent. Meg Chate and Dr. Cash and I have discussed this in the past. I just neglected to put it on there when I was creating the report.
All right, thank you.
What's a short description of that?
The rigging system has some structural issues. Some of those we were able to correct with our maintenance department to keep the theater functional. There's a few of the flies that need work done beyond what our maintenance department is capable of, and they are currently not being used by the school.
I'm going to incorporate something into a motion. What's a short description of
Oh,
what you
short
want.
description would be a structural modifications for Santa Barbara High School theater rigging.
I'll make the motion to approve the 2012-2013 annual report on statutory fees with that amendment.
Second.
All right, so it
I'm
was
sorry, I didn't read-
structural modification for Santa Barbara High School theater rigging.
Correct.
All right.
I have a question. So in the 11-12 report, you had the recommendation for future funds to be used for matching E-rate dollars for upgrades Cleveland, Franklin, McKinley, and Monroe. And then future forward, move to the next year, 12-13. And I just wanted to clarify whether that bullet point that I just mentioned is, in fact, in here as modification and installations for tech packages and technology. Is that the one in the same item?
They are not the same item.
Okay, so my question is, what happened to that bullet point moving forward?
I believe we spent the funds on that, and
Okay.
so they wouldn't be, we've already closed that contract, and so they would not be a future expenditure.
Okay.
The E-rate contract was done, the last one that we were on record for was done this last summer,
Okay.
and that project has been closed and received a notice of completion. The tech packages are an ongoing item that's being accomplished. The installation is being accomplished by our special projects crew. As sites purchase the equipment, we install it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Herron?
The sinks in the art room at various schools, that's included in one of these items, isn't it? The room modifications or something?
Correct.
Okay.
And our priority on those is the elementary schools that have the ICANN funding, and then as soon as we finish those sinks, we'll go on to any other school that requests it or needs. It's basically a deep sink with a clay trap that's appropriate for an art room.
Yeah. I know at the Adelante, they need one.
They are on the list.
Whether or not they get the ICANN or not renewed, but they still need the proper equipment.
And they're on the list.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or questions? We do have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have approval for authority enter contract negotiations with LPA Inc. for Facility Master's Plan Services. Mr.
Yes, as part of one of Telecu's phases that you've approved of their job description, they took the lead on putting out the RFP, RFQ for services to develop and update our facilities master plan. That process has concluded as far as the selection is concerned. The RFP, RFQ did go out. We received 11 responses. We had a committee rate those firms. We selected the top 4 firms to interview. Those 4 firms were interviewed by district staff, including Dr. Cash, Telecu personnel, including John Clem, the head of that company, and 2 board members. And we were impressed with a few firms, but one stood out, and it was a unanimous selection. So we are asking the board's permission to let Dr. Cash enter into negotiations with LPA Incorporated and bring back, hopefully, a contract for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hatyank. Board questions or comments? I do have a question for the board members who participated. I just wanted to hear overall impressions.
This particular company was one that stood out because they understood not just the architectural side of what we were looking for, but also the educational side. They really understood where we were at in terms of the changeover to the Common Core and assessment and different ways that facilities would need to be used in a 21st century educational environment. It was just dramatically different what we were hearing from them. So it was very impressive, and I think that they'll serve think we all unanimously agree that they would probably be the best to serve our district in this particular
Yes, there was
capacity.
absolutely no, in both their written document and their actual in-person presentation, they were by far the best. My heart went for a local firm, but when you compared what this firm does, they do exactly what we want to be done. The other three gave the impression they had never done it before, or had done it on site-specific master plans, where you know, here's 10 buildings you're going to build over the next 10 years. But this firm has actually taken a property like ours, you know, our school district, and going from the existing set of buildings into the future. And so I thought they were by far the best presentation.
Thank you. Dr. Buss.
I was going to ask that question, which is, without getting into all the details and rehashing the whole interview process, but talking a little bit about their experience, a little more of what you all saw as, or what impressed you most about their experience in that regard.
Well, I think Mrs. Parker mentioned it. They were the only firm that brought Common Core. They knew our, they had every one of our documents. They had all the history. They had done their research. We did not get that from the others, but they knew what our vision was. They knew what our objectives were. They knew what our historic sites were. They had visited them and looked at them. They had done a lot of homework and were prepared to help us go into the future.
Another thing I would just add is that they were very, first of all, they had already created a timeline, because we essentially have given them a year to put this together, and they were ready to kick off with a timeline already set up. So it felt like they would be able to start immediately, but also by far the firm that was most concerned about accurate cost projections, so that if any work that we needed to do, we would know exactly how much that was going to cost. And that is really important to us, of course. So they really stood out in that way.
Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, I'll make one more comment. If I had not been on the committee, I would be asking this question, so I'm going to ask it for maybe those of you who weren't on it. Under fiscal impact, it says $60 an hour to $215 an hour. That really doesn't tell you very much. And so one of you might have the question, what does that equate to? All four proposals were totally different in their estimate of what the cost would be. It was a dramatic range. And I know that we're not going to accept their proposal as is and that Dave will negotiate. But I think it's only proper that, Mr. Hatton, you tell us what was the total range that these 60 to 250 will add up to?
Probably in the range of $200,000. We believe, in talking with Dr. Cash and Kelly Coltrip, that there were some items in their proposal that can be accomplished without an extensive site visit and investigation, such as we can take the information that Teleku has developed on our existing facilities, basically our condition assessment, and then you can take what the board has approved for our bond fund Measure Q and R upgrades, merge those two together, and then know what our future needs are, rather than going to each site and seeing what has been done and what the needs are. So there's a savings there. But I'd say we're probably talking the $200,000 range. Maybe Dr. Cash or Kelly has a different number in mind.
I'd say that's probably accurate. I did check with, as directed by the interview panel, with the references. So the references all came back excellent.
Ms. Edelson?
I had a question. Has Teleku worked with this firm before?
They have worked with them before, but I don't believe on a master plan. No, you have not worked with them before.
No, we are currently working on a master plan in Temple City Unified School District.
Oh, okay.
And then also, where are they based?
The people we'll be working with are based out of Irvine, I believe.
Any additional questions or comments, Board? All right, I welcome a motion if there is one.
I make the motion to approve approval for authority to enter contract negotiations with LPA in court for facility master plan services.
Thank you, Dr. Buss.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Idelson. Any additional discussion?
Just for those of you, there is a document, school district LPA, that has the entire proposal if you want to take a look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Herron. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Hetyoung.
Thank you.
We are moving on to approval of field maintenance and scheduling agreement between the City of Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara Unified School District. Dr. Cash.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This is an item the board historically has seen. It's a little late coming to the board because we've been working closely with the City of Santa Barbara on how best to continue to explore a more interactive approach in how we schedule sports, community sports and activities on our school facilities. So this proposal is essentially for that short time period that will allow us to continue working toward the development of what we think is going to be a really highly collaborative and good interactive way for scheduling city property, district property to accommodate to the best that we can all the requests for community sports and youth sports. And so that the document reflects our understanding as to what field spaces would be available, and it's been reviewed by all staff and we're set to go.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board questions or comments? Dr. Buss?
Just a quick question. So that previous, so this is just for the interim. We're going to have come back to a larger discussion about sort of the overall field scheduling and that piece.
Yeah, I can just give you a tentative outline. We're moving toward more of like a sports committee that would meet. Rich Hanna from the City of Santa Barbara would be involved. Dr. Drati would be involved. Probably Lito Garcia as well. Mr. Hetyoung would be involved. And we would look toward trying to the best extent possible scheduling youth activities on our properties and adult activities on the city properties. We know there'll be spillover probably, but we think as a kind of a cultural attribute for our school district, we want our properties to serve the youth in our community.
Okay. I'd love to hear as that kind of moves forward, more of a discussion or an update as we move, as
Sure.
that goes. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
I'll move to approve the field maintenance and scheduling agreement between the City of Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara Unified School District.
Thank you, Ms. Parker.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Buss. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have board action, student discipline, case number 2013/14-07.
In case number 2013/14-07, I'll move to approve the stipulated agreement for suspended expulsion ending one school year in June 2014.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. This concludes our action agenda. We're moving on to the conference agenda. First up on our conference agenda is an update on Santa Barbara Charter School renewal process. Would we like to take public comment first, or would you like to?
Whatever you'd like to do, that's probably
Go ahead and do
good.
that.
All right, we'll take public comment.
All right, we do have one public comment. It's Linda Cohen. And you'll have 3 minutes, and I'll give you a 30-second warning.
Going to be less than that. Good evening. My name is Linda Cowan. I have been teaching for 35 years, of which the last 19 I've been very happy and love teaching at Santa Barbara Charter School. You've heard from our parents, and you've heard a lot from our past parents and present parents about our school. Tonight I just wanted to let you know about our teachers at our school. I wanted to introduce them. Half of them are here tonight, and the other half are working still on the scope and sequence and working very hard. We've just had parent conferences, and I want you to know how hardworking they all are. So I'd like them to stand up, because I just think that I'm very proud to be part of this group of teachers. They put in long hours, they are highly qualified, and go above and beyond what I think a lot of other teachers do. Because at Santa Barbara Charter School, all our decisions are made as a group. when we make any changes to our school, when it comes to our calendar, when it comes to assessment, when we're adopting, working with the new Common Core, all our decisions are done by a team. Everything we do at our school, we do together. And we do it under the leadership of Bev and Dave, depending whether it's an administrative thing or it's a curriculum item. So I just wanted to let the audience here and to you guys know how much we do take this very seriously, and we've put in many, many hours in with following up on the recommendations, and we hope that we will be approved going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Cash, do you have an update for us?
Mr. Handel does.
I do have an update. So this is an update from our October 22nd meeting. I wanted to let you know on October 28th we did receive an extension request, and by mutual agreement we are extending our time until our December 10th board meeting in order to make a decision. But I also wanted to let the board know that I have met with Bev on a couple of occasions, and we've been she's been sending me a lot of information, emails on a lot of the work that they've been doing, and I just wanted to give you guys an update. And as I look at some of the recommendations we've made, one was on a professional learning plan. Bev has been working, Ms. Abrams has been working very hard on a professional learning plan, which we sat down together, we took a look at, and I'm giving her feedback, as well as a Common Core standards transition plan. She's sharing all these documents with me so that I can give her the feedback and tell her what type of details we're looking at and we're looking for. She's also given me a description of some of the school-wide education programs that will help me and the rest of us, the staff, understand some of the educational programs that they have at Santa Barbara Charter. Additionally, she has submitted a more comprehensive description of the instructional programs for low-achieving students, high-achieving students, and English learners. I have been giving her feedback on some more clarity that I would like, and try and get her the most recent information in terms of best practice so that she can include that in her plans. And finally, the racial and ethnic balance, the plan for that. And that's something that they're still working on, but every draft, every new draft that I get, it's getting better and better. And I believe that they're making great progress. And lastly, Ms. Jate has been working with Dave Weissman on some of the financials to get some clarity on that, and we believe we got the information we need from them in terms of some of their financial projections that they made they included in their petition. So at this time, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Handel. Board, questions or comments? Mr. Herron?
Yes, I asked this to be on the agenda just for this very reason. We have a month to go. Do you see any major roadblocks?
I don't at this point. We're just going to keep working together, and Bev and Dave have done a good job by getting us the information we need and allowing us the opportunity to give them feedback on what they're giving us. They're going to make an effort to revise their initial petition, and so far so good. I know Bev is working real hard with the staff there to clean up some of the language and provide us more detail, but they're certainly making good progress.
Do either Bev or Dave have any comments as to the answer to that question? Do you see any major roadblocks?
No.
We're ready to move forward.
I guess one of my thoughts I put in writing to several people is how to try to ensure as much as possible that our district students get accepted into the school. And I know there's several exemptions that are in their charter as far as siblings, staff, children of staff members, returning students, obviously. But there's a couple in there. One is siblings of former students. And I would like, when we dealt with Adelante, they were very restricted on what exemptions they could put. In fact, we had to go with Adelante that the Santa Barbara district in a lottery had 2 chances versus 1. And I don't know if this charter is different than that charter, but I know it's written that our district takes precedent over Goleta. I mean, that's in there. But there's a couple of categories that I question of whether they're in conformance with the Ed Code. So I'd like somebody to check on that to make sure that the exemptions follow the Ed Code.
That's being done. Yeah, we had hoped to have that answer to you tonight, but we don't have it.
Well, and follow up on that, I would like very much if your admissions process could coincide with the district process. I've mentioned this before, and I put in writing. Our deadline is the 15th of February, but you don't make your decision until the 24th of February. That means like there were 23 our district kindergartners that didn't get in last year, if I read the memo correctly. But they're out of luck. They have no choice because they learned too late. So if there's a way you could let the district members know, parents know, before our deadline, they could then go and make an application to one of our other schools if they wanted to. So, and I know that's a hardship. You've discussed it's a hardship. But Adelante does it, Peabody does it. I'm just asking that you look into that carefully.
Sure, you can come to the microphone, Ms. Abrams.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There's two exceptions that we're looking at just for practicality's sake. One of them is we were going to add in, at this point our students are starting to come back with their children, and we had hoped to give them priority for getting their children in. We're not going to do that. The reason is just what you're saying. We need to have more spots. Since we have so many white students from the past, it's too likely that it would be a white student coming back wanting to get their child in, so we don't want them to have an exception to get their child in. The one on siblings of former students, I don't know. I mean, that was approved at the time by a lawyer. What we'll do is, of course, do what you're doing, which is check. There's an issue of, one of the reasons we really like doing that is it keeps the culture and the history of the school alive. As you've probably seen, you have lots of celebrations where people come back to Santa Barbara High or whatever. There's a great thing when people see the life cycle of our students. But we understand that concern, and it's something we'll look at. In terms of, there was a second part of your question. It's the date. We're happy to change the date, but there's a practicality you should be aware of. Most of the families usually don't tell us that they're leaving that early. So what happens is a lot of our movement in our enrollment happens between April and June because people are afraid to give up their spots because of the private schools may still be considering. So while we can say yes, we'd be happy to do our lottery on the at the beginning of February, it probably won't have a huge impact because so many of our openings happen later on.
I think the one benefit would be if you have 50 kids who want to get in kindergarten, and I had number 50 in the drawing, I'd go out and do something about it. So you can have the lottery and have the numbers, and then people can make their own decision of whether or not they should make other plans. So I think it's perfectly possible.
It seems, what you're asking seems doable. I'll run it by Dave, but it seems very doable.
Board, any other questions or comments? This item will be back to us for a vote on December 10th. All right, thank you. right, next we have first reading of Board Policy and Administrative Regulation 1330 of school facilities.
Mr. Torino will do the next two, H2 and H3.
Evening, Madam President, board members. These next two are just getting in alignment with our approved policy for the students. It's in use of school facilities and also our tobacco-free schools. I also invited Don Dunn from Public Mental Health, County Health, to talk about this. What I wanted to show you was the actual e-cigarettes that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Can you pass them?
Yeah.
What are these?
I think it's important that you actually see them.
That's the $1,000 one? No. We're on budget.
Looks like a pen.
So if I could have Don Dunn come up and explain how students or adults purchase these and how they access them. And these two changes to our board policy and administrative regulation are just making sure that these are not on our school at any time, specifically when other agencies might be using our facilities. Ms. Dunn?
Superintendent and school board members, thank you for having me. Mr. Torino, I'm Dawn Dunn, and I manage the county's tobacco prevention settlement program at the Public Health Department. And essentially what you have is the latest and greatest in the tobacco industry's next stand with delivering nicotine products. It's, an alternative tobacco product. Unfortunately, they are popular among our youth. And what you have in front of you, you're on budget because it's out of my budget. And we particularly purchase them because people don't know what they look like. So if, I believe this is televised, so whoever has them, if you can hold them up.
Dr. Paz.
Thank you, Dr. Paz.
Show them to the camera.
So that you can see that these are, the one is still in the packaging because it really does very much look like a pen. And these are in fact called hookah pens. God only knows why, because they don't really look like a traditional hookah pipe, which is the old Middle Eastern water pipe. But they just look like a pen of sorts. The other one is more, and you can open the other one by just flipping up the black top and just smelling it. I think it's tropical punch or something. But what these are is they look like a pen or a relatively innocuous item. From what I understand from the youth, from school personnel, and some of your, I know, Council on Drug Abuse and Alcoholism was here the first time you looked at the student policy, is that students have these on campus. They're hard to detect. They are odorless. They emit a vapor. The prevailing sentiment is that this is a harmless water vapor, which not from our standard, it is not. They have chemical emissions, fine and ultrafine particulate matter, gases, can be metals. There's a lot of new research on this, and it's very much too early to tell. But they are, these have a battery in them, so the product is suspended in a fluid. It's essentially, generally like diethyl or polypropyl glycol, which is what's in antifreeze. The nicotine concentrate or any other drug concentrate is suspended in that fluid. The battery is the heating mechanism for that fluid, and then the product is vaporized. And so what you have, so this is a whole new industry. These are vapors with an ER, not an OR. If you get the Santa Barbara News Press, there was a synopsis of a 9-page article from the Wall Street Journal that they summarized in Sunday's paper, and I can forward that to Mr. Torino. But essentially, the jury is still out, except that we do know from the CDC's report that we have 7% increase, a large increase in middle school students using these. And like I said, they can be used to vaporize other substances. They are relatively odorless and undetectable, and from what I understand, people have not known what to do with them on campus. So lastly, let me say to you, there will be people who tell you they are a smoking cessation aid, and there are 5 nicotine replacement-based pharmaceuticals that are approved by the U.S. FDA or Food and Drug Administration for helping people quit. This is not one of them. They, in fact, may do so, but right now we have other products that can do this. They are illegal to purchase by young people in the state of California, but they are still available, can be placed on the counter in our state, whereas other products are behind the counter. The city of Goleta is looking at implementing a new law, and they have agreed that they will include electronic cigarettes. We will be bringing something forward to the County Board of Supervisors to update their policy in this manner. So this is something that all over the state people are grappling with, and we think that they should, that this is not something that you want unchecked on your school campuses.
Thank you. Board, any questions or comments?
Bring it back to consent.
Right. Okay.
So they can both come back with
They can
consent?
both come back for consent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here you go. There, right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn.
All right, so we are moving on to discussion of Common Core standards, implementation funding.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The state legislature in California, pursuant to the governor's budget, approved approximately $200 per student to be spent over the 13-14 and 14-15 school years to provide districts with an opportunity to implement the Common Core state standards that were adopted in August 2010. The funds, first part of the funds have been received by our district. The second part, I think, will be received shortly. The money can be spent over the 2 years, and the legislation for that required that the matter be heard twice at board meeting, once on a conference item and once on action. The plan that's before you is very general in nature, specifically so, because we want to not bind ourselves to some specific actions that we're unaware of at this particular point. We have yet to actually take the Smarter Balance assessments, which we'll be taking. We still don't know what subject areas yet, but we'll be taking sometime this spring, and I know that that will be very helpful in informing us on what else we might want to need to do in the technology area. One of the things that we're discovering right now in our PLC process that we really want to get started on is allocating revenue to our PLCs so that they can purchase some, if it's going to be an app for an iPad or it's going to be some instructional materials, online printed materials, or Realia, whatever it's going to be, that they can purchase those in it so that when they're doing their Common Core lesson or unit, they have the materials they need. And we also know that our publishing enterprises across the world are going to make a big push to convince us that we need to continue to spend $100 to $150 per textbook relatively soon. We're going to try and resist that and put the money in the hands of our teachers through our PLC process and rely upon their expertise in guiding us in determining what will be the best purchase of instructional materials, and we just don't know what that's going to be yet. We anticipate we'll have a lot more information probably sometime next year. We could know sometime this school year, but the plan's before you because we need to start spending some of the money to support our teachers who are currently implementing the Common Core in our classroom. So it would come back to you with any revisions or additions or deletions at the next board meeting for approval. You will note that we had a good conversation amongst the principals. The money can be spent in 3 areas: professional learning, instructional materials, and technology. And what was interesting was that asking each of the principals to get feedback from their staff and then come forward and share with the, I did it in a kind of a percentage breakdown. how similar it all came out. There was a couple of outliers where, some schools wanted 90% on technology and 10% on instructional materials, but when we all got together and had that conversation and looked at it, it was pretty much 30-30-40. 30% on instructional materials, 30% on professional learning, and 40% in the area of technology. So that's the plan that's before you tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Board, any questions or comments? Dr. Buss?
So I know one of the items that we have, item 6 on the conference agenda is the one-to-one pilot update, and there's, I know, and looking at the presentation, there was mention of doing some assessments, and I'm wondering how those surveys and assessments, surveys of teachers and parents and other folks, is going to play into this. There's some connection?
Yes,
okay.
A direct connection.
Okay. And maybe Todd could elaborate a little more when he gets to that point in time, talk about a little more and refer back to this plan in particular. That would be helpful for me.
Okay, I'll do that.
Ms. Parker?
I appreciate that this is still an outline, and I actually think it's a pretty good outline. One question I have is just on the first one, facilitate high-quality professional learning opportunities. There's this ASCD National Conference attendance. Is that an idea that a large cadre of teachers would go? Or is it, who knows at this point? It's still waiting to figure that out.
It was recommended by, I think, the PLC liaisons, Dr. Dottie, that they wanted to attend that. There's a whole strand on Common Core implementation.
Mr. Herron?
On the 40% for technology, do I understand that, like, if we get $200, 40% be $80 per student, and then that would be allocated to every site based upon number of students?
No, it would not be based on an ADA. Allocation will be based on need.
Okay, can you give me any ideas of, when you say 40% for technology, what types of things are we thinking about?
Absolutely. We need to purchase access points, and you'll hear later tonight that we've learned, and we're not on the bleeding edge, or we might be on the cutting edge, but districts have, and really Mr. Rickman should be explaining this, so interrupt me if I'm saying it incorrectly, Todd. The districts have discovered that, well, a lot of systems have discovered that in the access points, which are the point of access for any wireless device, that the old model was based on a concept called coverage, and that the new model is it needs to be a concept called density. Coverage was essentially, you could see, and when you heat mapped an access point, how far out it could go, and if it covered the entire school, there was an assumption that that would be sufficient. But what we've discovered is that while that access may cover, if you have people on the edges, we can't say 40 go here and 40 go here. All 80 might go to one access point, slow everything down, and no one's accessing it somewhere else. So our goal, what we know for sure is we need to increase the number of access points in our schools based upon this new understanding. We've had a lot of practical experience with that. I think Todd said today that they had one access point at Dos Pueblos that was really designed for like 40 devices, had 86 devices trying to access it simultaneously, and that caused a lot of issues for users. So our goal is to, in particular with the pilot schools, is to put those access points in every classroom, which we haven't done yet because we're operating on the older model, and to ensure that there is a more direct access for the users. So that's one example, and I think that's an important use that we have a good idea what we're talking about, but when we think, based upon Todd's analysis, that we think that our larger rooms will require at least 2. Some of our schools have really thick walls, as opposed to other schools that have very thin walls. So we're learning as we're going in relationship to how this new density model is going to work, and it'll be important for us to have the resources to be able to ensure that if we're going to expect 100 wireless devices to access the internet, that we've created the infrastructure for them to do so.
Additional questions or comments, board?
Okay, well, we'll come back for action in December then.
Thank you. Mr. Rickman, I think you're next. Information Technology Services, FICMAT and Illuminate update.
Thank you. I'd actually like to start with the Illuminate update because Wayne Cole is here to do that. He said this is actually past his bedtime, and so if we could get to him early, he'd appreciate it. I just want to let you know before Wayne starts that our go live date right now is January 27th for Illuminate. I will be sending out by the end of the week training schedules to all the sites. When that will outline exactly who will be getting training and when that training will take place and where it will take place. I will be sure to include you guys in case you choose to go to any of the trainings. And Wayne is just going to go over briefly, as the board requested last meeting, what Illuminate is capable of doing as far as data reporting.
One of the things I want to also say is that every board meeting in closed session, you look at Wayne Cole's face. Because his photograph teaching students in math at Santa Barbara High School is one of the photographs in the conference room.
I might be wearing the same coat.
Well, and I will add that I had the pleasure of looking at his face for 2 years because he was my math teacher in high school. Hi, Mr.
Yeah.
Cole.
This is a treat. I have a parent of one of my favorite students. I have a parent of many of my favorite students, and I have an actual favorite student. So this is a pleasure to talk to you about Illuminate. I'm very excited about it. You might be able to tell. So Todd asked me to talk to you where we are, what it can do, give you some of the features, and so let's dive into that.
Do you want this?
Oh, this all.
The arrows.
Oh, nice.
Oh, the arrows on the button. There you go.
Oh, wow. Okay, can I make the slide move? Yes. Okay. So we've got modules, lots and lots of modules. Students is a module, and this is the one that's going to take the place of Aries, all right? The Student Information System. I'm not going to demonstrate what it can do because you're going to see actual real students and all their personal information and so forth. So, but trust me, it's pretty cool, and it is simple. Aries has things called queries. If you say the word query to a high school counselor, their face expression kind of changes. And this is click, 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 boom, away we go. Reports. So this thing does reports. And not only reports on how the students are performing, but we got reports on health, attendance, discipline. We got reports. Assessments. This is the student's favorite part, of course, assessments. Just kidding. We have a storage place for the assessments. We have tools to build, create new assessments. Teachers can take the assessments they've been using over the years and put them into Illuminate. So that's the assessment module. Scheduling module, grades. This is report cards. Very exciting to report that the elementary district is going to have online report cards. Teachers are going to go to the computer to fill out their report cards. And let me tell you a story about why I'm so excited about that. There was an administrator upstairs, across the way there, and he needed a report card of a particular student. And so he looked at his computer, and he got his mouse, and he clicked on shut down. He got out of his chair, he walked down the hall, he walked down the stairs, he walked out in the parking lot, he got in his car, he drove to the school, he asked the principal for the report card asked the secretary walked across her office, got down on her knees, went under a desk, and pulled out a cardboard box. That's the way it is to get a report card. Not with Illuminate, all right? You can, from anywhere in the world, it's a website, they can access that stuff. Special ed has a module, languages, health, discipline. The counselors are going to be using this, of course, and attendance, coming soon. Coming soon, we're going to be using Illuminate to not only take attendance, but track the attendance and the reports. So, as you can see, Illuminate is all things to all people, so it's better be flexible. This is the dashboard. It's my dashboard, okay? His dashboard might look a little different. you have complete control over what you see. These are called widgets. And you can delete widgets, you can add widgets, you can move them around and customize so you get what you want at your fingertips. Just logging in gives you this page right here, and you can see the list there of things that you can see. And I'll just highlight some of them. There's a place for favorites. Rather than hunt for the report you want, you can make it a favorite. And notice there's district favorites and my favorites. So somebody at the district can say, this is a favorite, and that would call attention to it, and teachers would check it out. We've got state assessment data, of course. You pick the year, you pick the test, and you pick the test, and then the subtest, and there you go. Green is good. Dark green is really good. I'm not sure what color, that's supposed to be dark green. But you can see that this is some good results here. You can dig deeper. This is by question group. So these are the different strands, you could think of them. This is some good news too. We're not here to analyze data, but that blue, light blue, that's us. That's Santa Barbara, okay? And the next one is the state average. So you can see that the light blue is the same or higher than the state average. The next one over is the lowest score to be proficient, and the last one is the lowest score to be advanced on that CST. So this is just sitting on the dashboard. You decide. Demographics. There's a drop-down menu. You could find out how many special ed, how many students per grade level. You pick the language issues, all by that demographic. Does it seem like there's more boys in school than there are girls? It's because there are. Okay. I don't really want the superintendent to see this one here. Ignore the numbers, they don't mean a thing. We don't have the attendance data in there. But this is a pretty amazing little widget. I know for a fact that he's going to ask me someday, who are the students that have been absent more than 10% of the time? You do that on Aries, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You got to do that query thing. You know what I'm going to do? Don't tell the superintendent. I'm going to click on that little red thing, that little red square there. All I do is click on it, and there come the names of the students that fall into that category. It's amazing, interactive like that. So there's your dashboard. Okay, let's go. Teacher's favorite widget, student birthdays. You log on and boom, you can find out who's going to have a birthday in the next 7 days, the next 14 days, and that sort of stuff. You can see some pretty famous names there. All right. Okay, so now let's go to the reports module, and I just put some, there's 86 of them that come pre-built. That means the school districts have told Illuminate, hey, we'd really like a report that does this, this, and this. And they built it for you. So here are some, and you can see, CST, Science, CMA, youngest and oldest. I had no idea what that was about. Very important. At an elementary school, you want to give a note home. Okay, you can find out which student, if he's the oldest one in his family at that school. And if he's the oldest student at that school and he's in kindergarten, what does that tell you about that family? Okay, and vice versa. So that principals were very excited about that one. Multi-year, multi-assessments, Casey, API, that was a popular one in August. And Pivot. I got to tell you about Pivot. We're going to do some math, Monique. We're going to do some math.
All right.
Okay. So the one on the right, does this point, laser pointer?
Yeah, the little trigger underneath.
Trigger underneath.
There's a little trigger underneath.
Yep. Nope.
There's got to be one of those red. Well, look outside.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Okay, so let's look at this circle right here, this circle. That represents a set of students. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to tell you what grade it is, okay? And I'm not going to tell you what school it's from, but it's a president's name. Okay, so this circle right here represents 7 students. Same information, both places, 7 students. These 7 students were, back in 2012, basic. On the 2013 test, they are basic. They were basic, and they stayed basic. Okay, in a lot of respects, that's a success. These guys here, how many, you tell me, how many? 11, good job. These 11 were proficient on the old test and proficient on the most recent test. Check out these guys, a huge group, 13, right? They were proficient, they tested recently at advanced. Reason to celebrate. Wouldn't it be great if we could figure out who those students were? Click on that 13. On the computer, you just click on the 13. There's the list of 13 students. Do something special for them. Give them a shirt, give them a pencil, give them a parking spot. You know, away you go. Those fifth graders, they need that. Okay. So the point of showing off this one is we've got the standard reports, bar charts, pie charts, scatter plots, and so forth. But this one, I think, is pretty special. This is the rest of the test. Again, old test, new test. Green is good, right? Green is good. So this is some real good news right here. All right. Use data to do lots of things. You know, you point out problems and areas of concern and students who aren't performing. But we also use it to celebrate success. I try and stress that. Now, if you don't get the report that you want with the pre-builds, you can build your own. Here are some highlights of the test reports that I've been building. And let's see, I think you guys got the joy of Miss Robertson last meeting. You saw some results on the KSEP. Here's principals requesting, same with this one, requesting some good news to share. So we looked at some outstanding 6th grade EL math scores, so I can get down to that level. Principals were concerned about their single plan numbers. They had to make some presentations to folks a lot like you. Reclassification, students who have met the requirements to move up in English language program. Okay, assessments. Wow, this is pretty awesome. We've got 4,000 assessments already available. A lot of those are the ones we took from Edusoft. Thanks to Mr. Rickman and his staff, in June, we were able to capture a lot of the teachers' work that they did in Edusoft and move it into Illuminate. You can create your own exams, and teachers are doing this. 40,000 items aligned to the Common Core, the content standards, 20,000 aligned to the Common Core. And they're not just multiple choice, although multiple choice is a big part of them. There's these non-traditional selected choices. This is when the answer is not A or C. It might be A and B and D. So students have to put in a little more effort. We're kicking it up a notch. And then there's constructed response. This means that the student actually has to come up with the answer, as opposed to selected response where he has to find the answer of those that are listed. Rationales. These questions come with rationales. What the heck is that? B is the wrong answer. But if he answers B, we get the rationale. What might be going through his head because he picked that particular wrong answer. So teachers can learn from the wrong answers as well as the right answers. So that's a pretty cool feature. So how does this all work from a teacher point of view? Well, you print these answer sheets, and then you have a webcam. I brought one. Click it in, plug it into your USB, and you set this on your desk, and you just set the test down on and it's graded. You just set it down. It's magic. It's a big wow. And we've got a student mode where the student walks up to I'm done with the test. Student walks up to the teacher's desk. Teacher has her computer there plugged into a webcam, or maybe she's using the camera on the webcam, and the student turns in his test. In the act of turning in his test, the test is graded. It's pretty phenomenal. We know as teachers that students don't care about the results of the test for very long. If we can get them right then, we can make some big changes. So that's a pretty cool feature. Once you have data, this is what an overview of a particular assessment is. You can see there's the charts just staring in the face. You don't have to make them, they sit there. And we've got 16 reports, including letters home to students and parents. any kind, you can compare your class with other classes at your site or within the district, away you go. So that's the assessment overview page. So you can see that we're alive and well. Illuminate, it's amazing how far we've come in just a short time. I want to acknowledge a particular employee, if I may, Mike Winger, half my age, absolute genius, and we're as far as we are because of his work. Well, look, there's lots of people working on it, but he is kind of the point for the Aries transformation, and we've got the right guy for the job there. And I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to keep on working. This is my 41st year working for the district, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Cole? Or Mr. Rickman?
Ms. Parker?
I'm not sure who it's for, but so one of the questions that we were asking when Illuminate was originally coming on was its integration with EDU, especially from the parent side, because right now I can't see my students' attendance in EDU, I can't see report cards that include things like citizenship grades or transcripts, things like that. And so I guess my question is, will there be a direct parent portal into Illuminate, or will there be some sort of link between EDU and Illuminate for parents to take a look at that?
There will be both. Our hope is there's a direct parent portal now into Illuminate. Our hope, though, is to link the system so you really, as a parent, don't know that you're in another system. We're working on that with both EDU and Illuminate right now, so that's our goal. Attendance reporting, we right now are currently working on getting attendance out of Illuminate into EDU, so you can look at most of everything you'll need will be in EDU, except if you want to look at state test scores and transcript data, you'll have to go into Illuminate. But again, we're hoping that that's just a link that you click on and it takes you right over.
Any other questions or comments, Board? Dr. Buss?
I know I've asked this question a couple of times, but I'm just going to ask it one more time. If I was a member of the public, are we going to have an opportunity for members of the public to look at how we are performing as a school district, especially on different things as we move forward with Common Core? I think it's really important to kind of have that ability to an extent, obviously, not everything, and but to be able to push that data out to a public place where people could look at data a little more if they so chose.
Well, I'm going to answer that question. We need to engage in a series of data public meetings. And I believe with Illuminate, we're going to be in a position to be able to have not only principals do that at their school sites, but as a district for us to be able to do it, because the information will be, as Mr. Cole has said, it's much more intuitive and easier to get. But we need to do that. I couldn't agree more.
Any additional questions or comments? Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cole. It was a pleasure having you.
I would like to publicly thank Wayne. His work on this has been tremendous, and we couldn't be doing this transition without him. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to briefly just talk about the FCMAT report and technology, if you could bring up the... So, a lot of this, I've decided that I was going to highlight a few of the things we're really proud of that we've done in some areas that we need to improve. We have gotten a lot done. What's hard in technology is that when you get something done, it changes all of a sudden. And so a lot of what you see here is still a work in progress. The big aha that we've had recently is the movement away from what Dr. Cash was talking about, this model of coverage to density. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to bore you and go through these line by line. I'm just going to talk about the ones that are highlighted in yellow. So one of the FICMAT recommendations was assess the current status of its wireless connectivity and develop and document the remaining implementation. We're almost 100% done. The problem is I would have written we're 100% done, but now we're looking at the need to put up more access points. The other thing that we're discovering is that some of the early work, in fact, one of my techs, Carol King, and somebody from M&O were out at DP this weekend testing cabling, and we found that some of the initial cabling that was done incorrectly. So we have access points that are lit up that appear to be working but actually aren't, because there are cabling issues. So now we're looking back, or we're looking at going to each site and testing the cables on every access point to make sure that they're working correctly. So we are working on that, but for the most part, I would say the wireless installation is completed. One of the things that I'm most happy that we've done, especially with your support, is that we put those firewalls at each school site. That's going to make this transition to any type of one-to-one program, if we decide to go that way, much more effective. When I talk about this with other school sites, they're not even aware of the issues that they have by having a single firewall with all the data that needs to flow through that device. It's a bottleneck at the district that we won't have to deal with. Could you move it up, please? So, we have issues, though. Ensuring that all our network closets have proper cooling and ventilation is an impossible task. We have network closets that there's water heaters in them. We have network closets that are rat infested. It's just to go and install air conditioning and clean up each one of those is going to be impossible to do. So we're going to work on the ones we can, and deal with the issues with the other ones as they come. So the next thing is Voip migration. I wanted to let the board know that this week our funding for Jive was approved. Our E-rate funding for Jive was approved. So we are I'm meeting with Steve Vizzolini and some people from Jive, and we're going to plan the rollout of Voip to all of our campuses. We're going to start very slow. Make sure things are working correctly before we move on. But this is a huge change. Some of our schools have really antiquated, semi-functioning phone systems that we need to get replaced, and so we will start with those schools first. You can go ahead and move up, please. So one of the things that we've really worked hard on is, as you guys know, going around to school sites, there was never any standard for purchasing technology, and we now have that. It's put up on our website. All the sites know, and so it makes managing our network much easier when people are buying the same things. We still have a problem. ASB sites can still buy what they want with ASB funds, and that is something that we need to work on. That's a blind spot of ours. Things will show up and we get asked to service them, and we're like, what is this? Where did it come from? Who approved it? But this move has made it so much easier for sites to order things also, because there's a menu of what they can get, rather than sites going out to Office Depot and coming back with all sorts of really good pricing on stuff that's just junk, that they now have a standard that they can go by. One of our weaknesses is we have no formal testing for software. That's something we need to develop. We haven't even begun to look at it. Go ahead. And all right. So lastly, the one thing that I want to talk about is that we have automated creation of email accounts for all staff members. That used to be something that was done by hand, and the deletion of email accounts was done by hand. And when I first came out, we found well over 250 email accounts for people who haven't been in the district for a long time that were still active. So that's all automated now. The one thing that we don't have that we really need to work on now that most of the major work is done as far as the wireless project is coming up with policies. We don't have an acceptable use policy that has been updated for technology in a long time. How do we deal with bring your own device? Who's responsible for devices on our campus that break? They're all things that we need now to start to talk about. And that's my FICMAT update. I'll take questions if you have them.
Before we take questions, Mr. Rickman, can we get a copy of this? I don't think this was attached.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Ms. Parker.
Well, just to follow up with that, I was hoping that both Mr. Cole's and Mr. Rickman's presentations could get attached to the Novus Agenda site so that we can go back and refer to it later.
I will do that.
Both of them.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Board? Mr. Herron?
Were there changes in the percentages across the board or just in the highlighted yellow ones?
There were changes across the board. I just didn't want to bore you by going point by point through them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next we have the one-to-one pilot update. Dr. Cash.
Great. Well, I want to first thank Todd for all the work he's done in technology and having to redo a ton of stuff while simultaneously moving forward has been a really difficult charge for him and his staff, and I think they've done a great job. So, as promised, I'm coming back with an update on our work. If you'll recall, the last time that we discussed this, I said our next steps would include parent meetings, we'd administer the survey, we'd continue teacher training, we'd develop an evaluation tool, and we'd create timeline for reporting to the board and the community. And I'm happy to say we've completed a couple of these tasks. We're not quite done with everything. So initially, the survey went out as follows. We had parent meetings at all 4 of our pilot schools. And those parent meetings then resulted in a number of parents responding immediately to the survey. The survey asked 3 questions: whether the families would like the student to acquire an iPad through a lease purchase program, whether the families had an iPad that made some specific minimum requirements, or whether or not they would like the student to be issued a district-owned iPad. And each of the principals has then subsequently followed up with all of the families that did not attend the parent meeting to get their survey responses as well. We don't have, we're just getting that data now, don't have it to present to you tonight. Also, but I can tell you that from 2 of the schools that I've received the data from, it's very similar percentage-wise to what you see tonight from the parent meetings. There's not a substantial difference in the percentage of parents who, for example, at Adams, who wanted their students to acquire through a lease purchase, and the similar number that had iPads, and there probably was a smaller increase percentage-wise in the number of families that want their student to be issued a district-owned iPad. But I'll have all of that data to you once I get it from all of the 4 schools. I did receive it from Adams and Franklin so far, and I'm sure Washington's is on its way. So the data here shows that at the parent information night that was held at Adams, we had 118 families that wanted to acquire the iPad through a lease purchase program. 10 families stated they had an iPad and would allow the student to bring it to school, and 8 families wanted their student to be issued a district-owned iPad. And the survey results at Franklin were very similar in the same kind of numbers. Survey results at La Cuesta, same kind of numbers. And I didn't, and I apologize, Ann, I was not in the state when I received your email, so I didn't include that, but I can tell you that we did get the data from Washington as well from their parent nights. And the data from Washington indicates that the majority of their parents want the student to be issued a district-owned iPad from the parent meeting.
Could you repeat that?
A district-owned.
Yes, the majority of Washington families that responded at the parent chat, your PTO and ELAC meetings wanted the district to provide the iPad, did not want to participate in a lease purchase, and did not want to bring an iPad.
May I ask, Ms. Dimon, just on this particular point, was it to the extent of it being a flip, the way of, say, the Adams and Franklin data?
Let's see if I can find it. 54 bring their own device, 78 purchase, and 135 use the schools.
Okay. So not a flip, but definitely a strong majority.
Correct. And I can tell you that, I'm sorry.
Can someone give me sort of an example of how it was presented to the families? Was there a question and answer? Was there a sales pitch? How was it presented? Or was it just handed a piece of paper and said, here's a survey?
Well, we have two principals here. They could certainly share with you their own personal experiences and how they did it.
And I was there.
Amy's the wrong one. She could sell me anything.
So I'm sure it was very similar, at least I didn't attend them, but hearing from, I didn't get detail from Ms. Wagon at La Cuesta, but sounded the same. Franklin, Adams, and Washington, the same sort of conversations occurred. But why don't you answer Mr. Heron's question?
We pretty much took Dave's PowerPoint that he shared with you all and just changed it a little bit to tailor it towards our school sites and those were our key speaking points. For our school site at Adams, I really wanted to get a large turnout for our parents, so we had the taco man come and have $2 tacos and really encouraged our parents to come to this meeting and promoted more the parent involvement piece on that aspect. And so we walked through it, and Todd was there. He showed up as well. And then I also had Rob Cooper. He's a 6th grade teacher of mine, so we presented together. So he talked about the teacher standpoint. And then my office manager, Ernestina, who is not only my office manager, but she's a parent. And so she translated for us, and she has a 5th grade son. So she was also able to not only be the translator, but also speak from the parent standpoint. So we had a teacher, myself, and then the parent. And we didn't have very many questions. So, I mean, at the end of the presentation, Kate was there because she is a parent as well. And so I think we did a pretty good job. What do you think, Kate?
You did, and I was waiting to see or hear the Washington data because I figured that it was likely that we would see that flip, because I realized that it's such a socioeconomic issue, and that is, if you are a family that already has one at home, it makes no sense whatsoever to send it to school with your student where you're risking damaging it, or you're stripping it every day. It doesn't make sense. If the district's going to have it, why wouldn't you have the district issue it? It makes no financial sense to do a lease purchase for a second, and it makes really not very much sense to do the sending it back and forth. But I had not realized, in terms of equity and access to technology, how expensive it is, or close to impossible for low-income families to have access to an iPad without paying exorbitant interest rates. And so essentially, we are a great financial deal for low-income families to have immediate access at very relatively low cost when you consider it on a monthly plan, and also the fact that they're not paying, even though they're being required to purchase insurance and all that, they're not paying these hugely high interest rates that you have with lease to own or with a credit card. And so it doesn't surprise me to see the flip at Washington, where I know that we have higher socioeconomic, so they're going to fall more into that last category. And I feel like I personally expect there to be lots of issues with the iPad pilot programs as we figure things out. But beyond anything, in terms of equity and access to our community, for families in our community to this kind of technology, I really feel like it's a boon for the district to act as a lease purchase agent.
And I'd also like to share with the board that this is the same, when we started down this road, Apple said that this is exactly what happens at the other districts that they've done this with, is that at your very low SES schools, there's lots of participation in a lease to own, and at the higher SES schools, very little participation.
So, and I'm going to assume your experience was similar to what Amy described.
I had 3 meetings.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
I can't believe you're here tonight. Ann has been under the weather, so she brought her bodyguard, I see.
And John was at 2 of the meetings. with my grandparents here. We had a DLAC, a PTO, and also a special principals chat with interpretation provided actually at all 3 meetings.
Great, thank you. So the other thing is I'll get you the complete data from La Cuesta, from Adams. Adams looks like you're probably between 20 and 25 away from getting every parent dialed in. Washington, you're close to that. Franklin is the same thing, but I just got the data today and I wanted to present it all to you, and I'll get that to you as soon as we're done with that. But I also wanted to talk about the teacher training that we're doing. We had iPad teacher training at Adams. I sent to you the flyer that we sent out. It looked like this, that provided teacher training. Happy to report that the first session we had 16 teachers attend. They all reported that it was fantastic, and in fact what I got almost, I'm going to guess immediately after it was over, was a request from Ms. Alzina to have 2 more sessions of it, that the teacher was interested in doing it 2 more times, and there was interest on behalf of the teachers, and so we immediately said absolutely, we'll pay for that. We want to get the teachers whatever they think they're going to need to be successful. Did every teacher that's participating in the pilot attend that training? No, because it was only 16. We have not surveyed every single teacher, and I don't know that we're going to know if every teacher who's teaching 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade and 11th grade at La Cuesta next year, we don't even know their names right now, because in elementary schools in particular, teachers change grade levels and assignments, not annually, but regularly. But I can tell you that our teachers are far, far ahead in having had an opportunity to have training. I know that teachers at Washington and at Adams, the 2 schools that are here tonight, have had a significant amount of training, both through the County Office of Education and through the capacity they've built at their own schools. We're going to continue working with our technology coaches. We believe our technology coaches are going to be a great opportunity and place for these 4 pilot schools to really flesh out some of the issues that we anticipate will happen, and those that we don't even have a clue will happen. We're going to provide some very specific tasks for our tech integrators and mentors on what we expect them to do in relationship to this, as far as sharing lessons and ideas on how they are utilizing the iPad in their classroom learning environments, so that the learning doesn't just stick within the 4 pilot schools, that it's shared across our district. And we're going to continue to integrate the Common Core with our TOSAs. We really think it's important. We don't want anyone to see that technology is something separate from our Common Core implementation, but see that as essentially the environment in which kids are going to learn. I have to say that was completely unexpected, but I just attended the Suburban School Superintendents Conference, and the dominant conversation was about one-to-one deployment across the nation. And I had the opportunity to pick the brains of dozens of superintendents that are in various stages of implementation with various devices, and learned quite a bit, and found a lot of the things that we are doing from the successful districts that have implemented it. We seem to be heading in the right direction, kind of ticking off some of the boxes that they felt were important. The one thing that I learned that was crystal clear, which I think I've shared with you, is that we don't know what the issues will be. I can guess, I can anticipate, but there's going to be stuff that'll arise that our problem-solving leaders, that 2 of which are here tonight, will have to resolve either quickly or help us over the long term understand how best to do that with this deployment. But it was really fascinating that the dominant thing that I took away from that, and that was, I had an opportunity to also talk to Tony Wagner, who is a Harvard professor. He was there, and he wrote a great book about innovation in K-12 schools, and talked to him about what he believes about kind of a one-to-one deployment and its relationship to the Common Core and kind of 21st century learning. And I'll share all of that with you as we go along, but it was really timely. I had no clue I would have that opportunity. Learned a lot, brought a lot of stuff home that I'm going to be sharing with the principals at our PLT meeting this week. So, next slide. The evaluation tool, which is really, really important, we're in progress on that, and that was also, I was able to get, I'm going to probably present to our 4 pilot school principals a template of one that Mark Edwards, who happens to be the National Superintendent of the Year, he's from a little small district. I didn't know the name of it because I'd only heard him speak until I saw it written, because the way he said it, he's from Tennessee, sounded completely different than the actual name of the school district. And they put together, they've had a one-to-one deployment since 2007. And he has a really cool evaluation tool, but essentially includes the stuff that we were thinking about. The areas of focus really were student engagement, and from his perspective, it wasn't Common Core, but it was standards aligned, that you were able to, through formative assessments, see improved and increased student achievement. There was a large increase in project-based learning, and that was very demonstrable in the classes through not just the observations, but also the capstone projects that kids did. And they used, Mark emailed me already a PowerPoint presentation he gave a national conference somewhere else about the improved student achievement in his district that he relates completely to increased student engagement. From his perspective, that getting kids engaged in school, and in his district, it's not dissimilar from us. It's high poverty. Instead of Latino, it's high African American students. But the data was interesting to look at. So I think there's a good, we'll come up with a good tool. I'm not convinced we'll come up with a tool that will keep forever, but at least we'll provide us a tool that will keep us on track in a way that we can report back to the committee or the community. The timeline. So Ann and Amy are going to cry right now. So just be prepared. I don't believe we're going to be ready to distribute iPads in December. I just don't think we're in a position to be able to do that at this particular point, as much as I would like to. Maybe we'll be able to bring forward at the December board meeting one school's ability to distribute in December, because maybe they're just a little bit ahead of the other schools, or 2 schools. But all 4 schools, I don't think we're going to be ready to do that. While that was our clear intent to try to get that done, to put the iPads in the hands of kids over the winter recess so they could play around with them, we may not be able to do that for all 4 schools. Our plan is in the January meeting to report back to the board on the distribution progress. We did have an opportunity to go down and observe that in particular. And one of the things that we took away from that we think we'll do is during the distribution process, they take the time to train parents. Parents have to come in, they get trained. And I thought it was, while I think our training will be somewhat more, maybe more sophisticated than what we observed, I thought it was a really good process that they engaged their community in. And then we'll report back to the board in February or March on how it's going. We'd love to be able to have teachers come forward, show you how they're using it, how kids are using it, and then continue that reporting through the end of the calendar year.
Dr. Cash, I have a question on this one side. Yeah. Under what conditions, or what conditions need to be met in order for schools to be ready, just so I can understand what needs to happen in order for schools to be ready to distribute iPads? Or what, perhaps it's not the schools, perhaps it's the district.
Yeah, it's internal, it's us. I don't, like I said, I don't have all the data from all the surveys yet. I want to be able to report back to you what the numbers are we believe are going to be for those 3 categories: bringing their iPads, school-owned, and then the lease purchase. And I don't have those numbers yet. I think I'll get them within a week or so. But I can't sit here today and say we're going to be ready to go in December. And December 10th board meeting, we're going to put on the agenda purchase, lease purchase of all these iPads, because I don't believe I have the data yet to be able to be certain.
All right, so to be certain, we need to have the data about the numbers that we need, but we also need policies, is that, or a plan? Is that what I'm hearing? I mean, what needs to be in place? So besides knowing how many iPads we need the policy, I'm guessing, or some kind of
we need
contract,
policies. We need to have installed the access points to build capacity for those school sites.
Okay.
Yeah. Say that again? Agreement.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
well, that's helpful to understand that it's not just purchasing them. There's a lot more in place, and it sounds like it's a lot of work.
You know, I want to, we've done a really want to, not often do we pat ourselves on the back, but I think we've done a really good job. Dr. Cash shared with me, and I've heard this from other districts, that they're just buying devices and handing them out. They're not taking the time to do training of their teachers. I really think that we've done this right, and it's worth continuing to go slow to make sure that we do it right. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard stories where, I mean, kind of the rule of thumb right now, and just like access points, 6 months from now I could be telling you it's a different thumb. The rule of thumb right now is iPads in the hands of teachers for 1 year prior to the hands of students. And we've had iPads in the hands of teachers for 2 years in most of the pilot schools. So we're in a good position. Are we perfectly situated? No, but I don't think we can wait to be perfectly situated. So I'm going to have Todd take over the next couple of slides. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question? Are we going to be purchasing iPads based upon the survey or based upon signed credit card applications and sign-ups by parents?
Well, our goal is to put an iPad in every student in the pilot program. So we'll be...
Either way.
Right, correct.
But we're not going to give a parent who says they will sign up, we're not going to give that, are we going to give that child an iPad before they sign up?
Well, the idea is that no student, if we're going to distribute any iPads, they're going to go to everybody at the same time.
Regardless of whether they've agreed to what they said in the survey?
Correct. It's like a textbook. It's like a pencil.
So, wait.
I will still give my skepticism. I don't believe the surveys. I'll leave it at that.
So, but I have a question. I'm sorry. Do they sign the contract prior to getting the iPad or after they get the iPad?
Well, at the time we distribute it, that's when we would do that.
So at that actual moment, you
Yes.
say, here's the contract, here's, what is it, which of these are your options? For all these options, here are the appropriate agreements.
Right, and then on the next few slides, I'll explain then if they are choosing to participate in the lease to buy program, then we'll set them up with a portal account where they can go in at that point in time and set up their payment options and things like that. There is no credit report that they do. This is not going to be a legal binding contract. A parent halfway through could say, yeah, I've decided I don't want to do it. And those are things that we're going to have to talk about and work out and have a plan for, because it's going to happen. So I just don't think there's any way right now to say how many people that's going to be, but we have to plan for it.
Do other school districts, have something like this? Do they know what the percentage is? Like some rough number of like, oh, you should expect 10%?
So we met, Meg, I can't even remember, it was like last week and I can't remember. We had a presentation by Xerox, who handles the collection of payments. And it's very slick how they do it, and they can do everything from sending out letters, and it depends on the level of service we want to purchase. But they didn't indicate having problems getting payments from large numbers of people. And the truth is, if a family decides not to pay anymore, we're still going to allow that student to use an iPad. We'll just have to decide what to do with the payment we have already collected from them and how to deal with that.
What I hear from across the nation is that the majority of districts just buy the iPads and hand them out. So.
Again, I would just say in the spirit of equity, when I heard that the higher economic people take a free one and the lower economic pay for it, I understand what Ms. Parker said. I just feel there's something unequitable about that. I don't think that's equity. It just doesn't sound right to me.
Well, it's their iPad. That's the difference. It's not a textbook. It's one they get to keep for forever.
How many higher economic people buy an iPad thinking it's going to last more than 3 years and it's going to be of any value in 3 years? I just, what's the value of a 3-year-old iPad? I don't know. And
Well,
so
hopefully it's still good, because mine's 3 years old right now.
Yeah, but you're probably going to get a new one soon.
I don't think I can learn a new operating system, so.
I don't know, I just have queasy feelings about it.
Well, what would you suggest, Mr. Herron?
Give everybody an iPad.
Not even give families an option to purchase one?
Yes.
Dr. Boss, then Ms. Idelson.
One thing I would love to hear as we move forward in this especially is the parent training part, and know more about that. I have my own reasons I couldn't want that. I'll just relate the following story. Not that it's going to be covered in the training, but I was at dinner on Saturday night, and I'm sitting across from my wife, and behind her, back there, is a young man sitting with his family eating dinner. Not really eating dinner, playing with his iPhone the whole entire time. And I'm wondering to myself, thinking, I wonder if this parent, what interaction are they having at dinner time with one child playing with the iPhone, totally with his earphones too? And so I'm thinking, as we're talking about this whole process, is what are we going to provide parents in terms of providing, for some of them, it may be their first computer purchase, a significant computer purchase. They may have gotten something else, but I think that's an important thing to kind of consider. Not that we have to sit there and say, here are the guidelines that you have to work with your child, but there has to be some parameters in terms of if this is going to be an educational tool. I think parents need to be looking at it as an educational tool, not as a way for their children to do something else with, you know.
Yes, well, I'm going to be holding digital citizenship summits starting December, January, and February, which will be parent meetings in English and Spanish. Same kind of construct I did with the strategic plan, to have a conversation with parents about what it means to be a digital citizen in the 21st century. So acceptable use, you know, there's probably way too much information out there that's available, but it'll be around how parents can manage devices, what the expectations would be, and I know that, as I stated earlier, that at the distribution there will be parent training that will be given, and I know that each school is planning parent training. I can report back that one of our schools, and I hope it's either Adams or Washington, has told me this, but they plan to hold an iPads basic class in December, iPad understanding social media and your student, iPad apps for students, and how to support your student in a one-to-one program, and those are workshops that start in December and go out through the end of February. Thank you. So those are the things that we'll be doing.
So I have Ms. Idelson and Ms. Parker.
I was just curious what model you're planning on as far as the iPad?
The most recent one, so it would be an iPad Air. The same, it's the same price as the one we've been looking at.
Ms. Parker?
Okay.
Just on the comment of it being an educational tool, I personally think that part of the reason this is so attractive to families least to purchase is that they are looking at it as a family tool. And this is their opportunity for the entire family to use it. And that's why I'm looking at it in terms of community access rather than just the one student's device. It becomes a family device. And I think that there are benefits to that. And so I really appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Herron, and I'm not quite sure where I am with that, but I would love the idea of it just going back and forth and just being a school device, and the school provides it for everybody, but then that limits what the family can use it for. And in this way, we're actually opening up to much wider variety of uses and for the entire family to use rather than just the student. So there are pros and cons.
In my Avid one-to-one, we saw that a lot, that brothers and sisters used it to write papers. Lots of people used it.
What limitations will there be on it at home? Whether it's district provided or...
None.
None.
None. So that it still can be a community family machine.
Correct. Oh, if it's a district-operated machine? That we haven't decided yet, what that looks like.
That's my question. What's going to be the difference? Like, if I walk home with one provided to me by the district, and I walk home with one that I'm leasing, how will the two machines differ?
They won't. They'll be the same. And I just think that there's a difference between a car you rent and a car you get to own. Pride of ownership, all sorts of things that go along with that. Not just access, but just good feelings.
And I have a question. What about the summers? If it's a school or a district iPad, I mean, district textbooks, we gave them back.
We'll get them back during the summer.
So, I mean, that's a huge difference that there's
Yes.
3 months period where some folks could use it versus not having access to it. I absolutely 100% hear what Mr. Herron is saying about something about this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense in some ways if you think about it from one perspective. On the other hand, I get it. I absolutely get why families would want to make the investment. And I think that's the core of what they're seeing this. This is an investment. It's not just this computer, it's an investment for their students, for the family as a whole. I've already mentioned this multiple times. That's how I got my TI. So I know that they don't exist anymore, but they do. Okay, so whatever number they're at, but so I get it. I mean, I get that that's part of technology and the idea that you have it with you at all times, that you don't give it back, that it's yours, and that perhaps you're also at a more equal playing field than those people who had that piece of technology as a toy earlier on. And so I think that I hear kind of what's being said. I have my own concerns, not so much related to the, well, yes, related to the purchase, but related to the other pieces of just structure and capacity. But I think it's a hard one.
I'd also like to add that when a student owns the device, the way they care for it is completely different than when they don't own the device. And we want them to be careful with that.
The evidence of that is overwhelming. You look at a textbook that's owned by a student versus one that's given to a student, very different use.
Did you have something to say?
Okay, well, we're still on this.
Okay, so I think we haven't gone through all of our slides.
No,
Are
we have
okay?
about
All right.
40 left.
Oh, great. Let's go. Now 39 after this.
Okay, and now I turn it over to Mr. Rickman and Ms. Jate as his able assistant if there's any questions.
So we had a go-to meeting with Xerox, who manages the what they call Invest in Learning program. It's really amazing how it works. But it allows us to automate the collection of payments, and a little different than when I was doing it in Avid, which I was collecting and putting in a spreadsheet manually. This is all automated for us. We get reports. The parents can get reports. It's very nicely built. So this slide lays out who's responsible for what. I just want to go over kind of, things we've done. The school promotes the Invest for Learning. The school purchases or leases the iPad. The school assigns the equipment. Parents then are given a portal access to make payments. They can do credit card payments. They can do electronic check payments. It runs the gamut. Anything that we want to enable, we can. We can even set up, and I don't suggest we go this way because management would be difficult, but different payment plans for different students. And of course, if they come into money, all of a sudden they can just pay it off all up at once too. So it's very flexible. And what Xerox does is they collect the payments for a fee, a small transaction fee, and then they deposit the money into an account of our choosing. Go ahead. So these are slides that I took from Xerox. These are not mine. But how people benefit, the schools benefit It improves the learning experience by placing technology equipment with more students. It allows us to recoup some of the equipment costs. And again, the management becomes something that is very simple to do. We talked about this already at length, and it's something I think we'll continue to debate, is who benefits and why. So here are the costs and what you get with each of these levels. They have a silver and gold plan. It's a $500 one-time setup fee for either plan. And it's
who pays for that? I'm sorry, is that the school?
The district will pay. Yeah,
for each school?
It's one payment
time
for the entire district.
Okay.
$500 one time for the entire district. And then it's a fee per transaction. So it's either $125 or $2 based on what level of service we want. Everything in the silver plan is included in the gold plan. And the thing they add with the gold plan is reminder calls. The other thing that Xerox provides that's really nice is that they handle all the customer support with either the gold or the silver plan. So if a parent, hey, this payment didn't show up, or why was I billed for that, or they have a 24-hour helpline that parents can call. The website is in both English and Spanish and other. All right. Payments that are available. If it's a paper check, there's a 20-cent fee. Credit cards. We discussed this with them. Credit and debit cards. There's a small convenience fee, and that's dictated by the credit card company. And then cash payments can be enabled at school, so somebody can walk in with a check and pay at the business office, and the business office clerk can enter that payment into the system. All right. This is if we wanted to have paper statements mailed out. It's 30 cents plus postage. More options, collection letters, electronic collection letters, non-sufficient funds. They suggest you set up, that you make the parents know. And this is all stuff we would do when we distribute the iPads, show parents fees if their check bounces, what it will cost them. So, do you want to talk about initial cost?
No.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward.
It is. Do you guys have questions about the initial costs?
I just have one. In a couple of these, it says a fee will be assessed based upon the school decision. Are we going to let the schools make?
No.
Will that be a district decision?
It will be, yes. We're going to set that up as a district policy.
Dr. Boss, did you have a question?
Yes. So going back to those different plans, did they give you any information in terms of, I'm assuming that if you go and you pay them a little more, that this amount of service will result in making sure that we're getting our money back in terms of the iPads. Any numbers or statistics in terms of that they've, from their own experience, that shows that, or anything?
They didn't share that with me, but I can certainly get that information for you. I'll ask.
I'm just looking at it in terms of the difference. We're looking at 75 cents per account or per transaction a month, and is it worth?
I understand what you're asking. Is it worth this? Yes, I will ask them that. Yeah. I hope they give me the honest answer and just don't say, yeah, you definitely need the $2.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will ask.
Thank you.
Any questions about the initial costs?
In the last report, by the time you added up all the tax and the insurance and the Apple Care, it was like $700 and some dollars.
Yeah, we've sharpened our pencils. Yeah, so we've gotten the cost down to, Meg, last time we looked, it was about $20 per month per iPad, right, over 3 years. So we're right where we want to be. We wanted to make it $20.
That includes the keypad, the case?
That does not include the keyboards, but it includes the case, self-insurance, and I think those are the only items that it includes. A case and self-insuring the iPad. And the cost of the iPad, of course.
Okay.
Oh, and the fee, and the transaction fees.
But will all that be financed, or is that?
Only the cost of the iPads will be financed.
So, but the rest of the cost will be put into the $20 a month?
Right.
Okay.
And the one nice thing that Apple does for schools is they will allow us to 3 to 4 months to make the first payment, and that allows a school district to collect funds over 3 or 4 months before they have to make that initial bulk payment on a lease, if that's what we were going to do. All right, Conrad? Awesome.
Great. So now we can start the questions and comments board. Questions or comments? I have a list, actually. So I was waiting till the end. But what's hard for me is we just had the FCMAT report where some items were at 0 and where we heard some things that were a little alarming as far as our capacity. And there is no doubt in my mind we have to move forward. So that's not even a question. We have to move forward. Students need the technology, but I'm concerned with our capacity to handle all these new tablets when we're having a hard time handling what we have now. And so adding several hundred to the system, 2 points, and I get that this is all part of the plan, but I'm struggling. I'm struggling with figuring out how we're going to do this as a district, because I also think putting tablets in the hands of students when they can't use the tablet the way they need to is also not the best thing to do.
It would be a disaster, yes.
So,
but I can tell you, either we do it intentionally or it gets done, unless the board instructs me not to allow schools to purchase iPads for students.
no, and like I started off saying that I get it, we're moving forward, but I'm having a hard
It's not
time
going to be
with the
perfect.
confidence and the capacity.
It's not going to be perfect.
Well,
There's no way that I could sit here and guarantee that this rollout will have no hiccups and everything will be done perfectly. We know that now we have to add more access points. We've learned that. So we're in the process we've developed a plan, and we're installing access points. We're targeting the schools that are in the pilot program first. You know that we have reorganized IT. We're in the process of filling all the positions that were authorized by the board. We have schools that are ready to go, and if we don't do it kind of with some intentionality as a district, then I will be left to telling schools they can't do it by themselves, because they're ready to go. They feel like they have the capacity to do so. That was really what was important about picking the 4 schools, was their willingness or belief in problem solving and getting to points that, knowing there might be bumps along the way, that they can still get to and feel confident about implementation.
So then for those 4 schools, what items on the FitMat list need to be prioritized for those 4 schools?
The access points.
The access points. There's very few things left on that FCMAT list that would impact a one-to-one program. There are things like coming up with processes for evaluating software that school sites want to buy. I mean, there are things like that. There's very little major infrastructure things that are not almost 100% complete. And the ones that aren't 100% complete, it's because we found out that, now we need more access points.
Just had a question. If knowing or anticipating that we're going to run into problems, because I think everything like this, trying to do it at this level, even having pilot schools, or in particular having pilot schools, we should probably do a really good job of documenting all of the issues we're going to run into, and using that as as a good benchmark to say, as we implement, we move forward, we go through the pilot stage, we all figure it out, this is the direction, we're all going one-to-one across the entire district, or expanding it, and using that information in a really good way so that we don't run into the same mistakes again and again and again and again. We don't come back as a board and having another discussion, why are we talking about this again? So that would be my recommendation.
Great recommendation.
Well, in addition, I think we really have to, I mean, there were some items in the presentation when you talked about where, you know, the heating and ventilation, and I'm thinking to myself, really, these are some of the issues we have? I don't know that the whole board knew some of what you described as being an issue, but I could actually see that impacting access to some way, well, it may not impact it. And so I think that the list of anticipated challenges that we may have are good, but I also think we need to be okay with having an honest conversation and saying, look, here are the things that are really going to be of a concern, because the other piece that happens, and I think back to the beginning of the school year, where it doesn't go right, and it's not just the parents we're hearing from, it's our own district staff, teachers, and classified that let us know this is not working the way that you all think it's working. And I'm trying to understand what it is that we have within our control to do now, so that when we do have these tablets in place, that we don't hear or we don't, I guess, have as much of the concerns that I feel have been a constant in our district. And so I'm trying to grapple with that of like, well, some of these issues have been themes. We've had a conversation about access points a lot. And I'm not sure that I still feel super confident, but again, I know we have to do this, but we should definitely be honest about what we can or can't do in relation to this.
There are things that are not on that FCMAT list that we should do, that aren't part of that.
Yeah. Things. I mean,
and there's other things on the FCMAT list that are completely unrealistic for us to do. The setting up an air conditioning unit in every closet where we have a switch is what they suggested. That's unrealistic for us to do, and in most cases not necessary. In an ideal world, if we were a Fortune 500 company, we would do that, but we can't. And the impact that will have on the network itself is negligible. The issues that we have at our site still to this day is shoddy work that was done from the beginning, like going out to DP and finding that about 70% of the wiring that was done incorrectly, and the cause for a lot of our issues. That's not something you would even think to look at because the access point is working. But we finally got to that level where we're like, let's just test every single wire again. And that's what we found. That's work that was done by contractors. So those are things that are not in the FCMAT report that we should go to each site and do. We should test every single cable because we won't know until we do.
all right, so as far as the potential policy or agreements, when can the board expect to see like a draft policy or agreement? Because I think that there's a lot of questions of, you know, what happens if people do stop paying, and it sounds like we don't have an answer for that now. What happens if people don't give it back over, the iPad over the summer? You know, what kind of payments are allowable? When would we have a draft? I mean, I'm guessing we have to have that before it goes out.
I'm not certain that we're going to be able to capture all of the what-ifs. We can certainly attempt to get some of those what-ifs captured in some sort of agreement, but my concern and what we're learning from other districts that are doing it is that it's like a dress code. There's no probably way that we'll be able to capture them all, but there's some basic things that we've taken from Oxnard that would be part of what we would do. So you want to see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, at least I don't know about the rest of the board, but I don't know what this would look like, and if we're ready, I mean, in January to give these out. Because at the end of the day, I think that we're going to, in some ways, you know, carry the brunt of like, hey, this project didn't go out. I think we all also read the LA Times article and, you know, heard from our constituents about what went wrong, and I think it's important that there are already things that, the ifs that we've identified, so at least those ifs that we've all thought about collectively, those probably should be addressed. I get that we can't think of everything and we'll deal with the rest, but there's some things that I think are like, well, I don't actually know. And I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that question. If someone in the community says, you know, this is a rather large investment, have you thought about this? So I think it would be worthwhile to see that before the tablets go out, at least the draft.
I would be supportive of that as well, because one of the things that that really comes to mind in terms of all this, especially as an investment, is that the public's not going to pay attention to every meeting that we've had and realize that we've had a lot of discussion around this. They're going to look at something's go wrong. All we have to do is look at the federal government's implementation of affordable health care to realize that that could blow back in your face really quickly. I'm sure there was a lot of investment and time in that, and there was a lot of money put into that. And the same could be said in terms of our investment in this, and not to belabor the point, but the point should be made that we need to be really careful about the implementation, but have open discussions about all of the possible things that can go wrong at this point, rather than wait and find out later on that we didn't. Fully knowing that we can't anticipate everything, but the stuff that we do know, or that we haven't had the opportunity as a board to discuss or even know about, I think that this is the time to really talk about that and really address that, rather than wait for it to come back to us and have someone from the public say, I told you, see?
Mr. Herron?
Yeah. On the distribution of these iPads, 1,200 of them, is there going to be a family meeting and we'll hand them a box with an iPad in it? Or will the iPad have had some tweaking by the district so that it's easier to start up when they get it at home?
So I really like how Oxnard did it. They brought every family in. They did a video presentation of what the program was about, why they chose the device, how it was going to be used, the partnership between parents and family. Then the parents they were distributed an iPad, and then they went and met with a technician who helped them set the iPad up, create accounts on it, show them the parents the basics of using it, things to look out. I would imagine we would do that. To answer your question about are we going to tweak it at all? Right now, I can't answer that because things are changing on that front right now. My answer would have been, no, we don't need to tweak it, and now we might have to, based on some technology changes. So I can't answer.
Yeah, I guess my question is, if they walk into a classroom with that iPad, are they going to have to physically make it work? Or
no. So ideally, we will configure the iPads. We'll do what's called onboarding, where we'll put profiles on them that automatically connect to the wireless, that do all that kind of stuff.
That's my question.
Yeah.
The other is, have we given any thought to the fact that in order to take it home and use it in their house, they need some type of wireless connection? I mean, a cable connection, router, something in their house in order to have wireless access in their house.
I think we've talked about this before, and Dr. Cash and I have talked about it a lot. We really need to work with Cox to make that happen. We talked about at the meeting of Computers for Families, getting the word out about Cox's $9, $9.99 a month for wireless, that we need to get that word out.
That ends in December.
Oh, it ends?
That's what I understand it, yeah.
Well, I think it's a bigger issue than that.
Yeah,
I think
we need to deal with
It's a
it.
City of Santa Barbara issue with the school district. I think it's an issue of our community deciding it's going to provide hotspots in our community in neighborhoods in which wireless access isn't readily available, because that's being done all across the nation.
Yeah, but that's a long-term project. I'm just worried about the kid who gets the iPad, takes it home.
But they don't need to access the internet.
They don't need
in
to
order for
access
it to be.
to use it.
Well, we have a digital divide then we've created. The higher economic people will walk in with their iPad, connect to their wireless system in their house, use it for their homework. The lower economic will have to go to Franklin Center or have to go back to the library and use it someplace else.
Or we educate our teachers so that when they do homework assignments, that they assign they design the assignment so the internet's not needed when the kids are at home, and they download all the data that they need before they leave school.
Yeah, that's just educating to a lower common denominator, which I don't approve of at all.
Well, then what is our choice, would be my guess. Our choice is that we don't distribute the iPads until everybody has access to the internet, which I don't think we can ensure happens. I can tell you that I believe it's going to be required partnership with our communities. I don't think the school district can be responsible, though. Todd and I have started talking about how can we create our own hotspots around our schools. I've been talking to the county education office about this as well. That's a bigger issue than iPad deployment.
Ms. Idelson?
I'm wondering, on the iPads that remain district-owned, when they're handed out, is there going to be a agreement with the families or parents if it is lost or damaged, like you do with musical instruments?
Yes, same as that as with the textbook, yeah.
Okay, so a certain amount of money that would be put up if it's damaged or doesn't return?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions, board, or comments? Mr.
Yeah, just on the timeline, I know it's probably included in the report to the board on implementation, but I'd like to add to that timeline some very specific reports on teacher training. When you mentioned 17 teachers were in the first training at Adams, was that 17 teachers from Adams, or was that 17 teachers from the district?
So you would like us to give you the names?
No. I just want to know, what did that one slide mean? 17 teachers, you said 17 teachers in training at Adams.
District-wide.
That's my question. That was a district-wide.
So I had 4 teachers.
Can you come to the microphone? Thank you, Ms. Alsina.
It's district-wide. In the first class, keep in mind, there's the 3-tier. So the first class is the bare bones basics class. So it's iPad 101. So it was identifying the teachers at your school sites that needed, for example, how to use iOS 7. And so that's not everyone on your staff is going to need to know how to use iOS 7. So we identified 4 teachers. So I asked all 4 teachers to attend the training. All 4 teachers did attend the training. So at my school site, I now know that 100% of my teachers are proficient in iOS 7. And then the feedback from that was that those teachers enjoyed that training so much, and Wendy Mirabod, our curriculum specialist, is the one who actually conducted the training. They requested that she continue on with that training with that same cohort for an iPad 101 B and C. So that's where that comes into place for that. So then we had the second course was the Illuminate training with Wayne Cole. So again, that's the first tier. And then today was iTunes University with Mallory Price, my kindergarten teacher. And so she taught the teachers how to set up an iTunes U course on their iPad as well as on their laptop computer. And so on Thursday, Mr. Federbush, my 5th grade teacher, will be teaching and training the teachers on how to use EDU 2.0. So at Adams, we have 3rd through 6th grade teachers using EDU, but we need to make sure that all of our teachers are learning how to use EDU, because that will be the eventual goal, that it comes down and trickles down to all the elementary sites. Does that help? Yeah.
Amy?
Pleasures?
Yeah. This is an article on how 3D computers are being used in business across the nation. And also, I had mentioned to Amy earlier that the astronauts are going to start taking 3D machines into space so they can make things on demand when they need them. So we've got a whole bunch of 5th grade astronauts in process at Adams.
I love that. And that is our last class right before our winter break, 3D printing with Mr. Cooper. And at Adams, we purchased 2 more 3D printers. So now we have 3 3D printers at our school. It's exciting.
Any additional questions or comments, board? So I just want to reiterate, I don't think anyone on this board is saying that we're not going to move forward. I think it's it's our responsibility to raise these difficult questions to which we know that we don't have answers to. But I think that this board is well aware that we need to move forward. But no doubt there's still some challenges as we move ahead. So
I came with 9 questions. They all were answered, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so we are moving on to discussion of gifted and talented education survey data. Is that Dr.
It's Mr. Handel and Dr. Drotti. I don't know who's going to go first.
Dr. Drotti will be starting the presentation with the secondary gate results.
Good, I got some time today. The Gifted and Talented District Advisory Committee conducts an annual survey of parents, students, and teachers regarding the perceptions of GATE and honors courses. This report is a summary of the observations and recommendations for future actions based on years of survey data, anecdotal data, and district evaluation of the GATE honors curriculum. What you see before you right now is basically the summation of the different comments, the survey data that you had a chance to preview. And these are, we can go through all of them, but I guess the pieces I want to highlight are that a parent and student satisfaction is dependent upon teachers, pedagogical proficiency with the differentiation. Survey and anecdotal results indicate parent and student dissatisfaction is primarily results of quality of instruction, quantity and quality of homework. Data indicates there are a certain number of teachers who hold the belief that differentiation would relieve some of the concerns related above, and some beliefs that students' placement is a problem. If we go to the second, any questions regarding this here? If we go to the next page. So recommendations are, there's going to be a major focus on professional development, and we want to be able to build PLC capacity with our honors teachers and AP teachers and IB teachers with differentiation strategies. We want to talk about the philosophy of honor students and learning, and there's a theory out there, growth versus fixed theory of learning, that our CAG is, I don't know if you're familiar with what CAG is, but that is the California Association for Gifted, the association that the district belongs to, that subscribes to that belief that learning is not fixed, but a growth. So that's a discussion that we have to break some of the issues that we've identified in the beginning. Any questions with what you see up there?
Ms. Parker?
I can see that one of the secondary recommendations is to engage the services of Dr. Kaplan, who's very well known in the gifted community for her professional development and her theories on gifted education.
Yes.
Would that be something that the secondary gate fundraising would pay for, or would that be paid for by the district?
No, that's professional development, we believe, is our responsibility, and
Great.
we will pay for it.
Okay.
Other questions? I have a question, and I saw, and I can't remember if this is at the end, but I did see that for the elementary, there's a breakdown of what schools responded. Did you, I don't think I saw that for the secondary. Did you have or did I miss it?
The breakdown, you talk about the participation? Or?
Participation, yeah. Was it equal or distributed? I mean, was it?
The survey data, I know, I did not report the data because I know, my understanding is that you guys received the information ahead of time. So I just summarized the results.
Right, and your as far as, was it representative of the secondary schools, or did you find, because I know that one of these slides for the elementary talks that it was very heavily weighted on one school, so I wondered if that was your experience
yes,
on the secondary level.
If you remember the previous year, you guys directed me to ensure that we have full participation, so I ensure that we have full participation.
So I wanted just to make sure. That's a great answer, Dr. Reddy. All right, so it's reflective of all of our secondary schools.
I'm comfortable with our level of participation.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Begs the question.
Right. All right, thank you.
So next slide will be the elementary.
That's the elementary, thank you. So I didn't get that memo last year, and this will be the first time I'm presenting the elementary gate survey results, but you were right, Ms. Lamone. The summation of our data is that it's very limited and skewed. You'll notice that nearly all of the survey results came from one particular school. And you also see only 13 out of our 48 possible teachers participated, and only 1 out of the 12 site principals participated. And one that also stuck out to me, that we only had one Spanish-speaking parent participated in the survey, which for me was very alarming. Another piece that we saw was the limited professional learning opportunities for teachers, which you see up there, and I think we see evidence of this next one, which is the limited access for non-English speaking students and families. The district-wide gate survey is not viewed as a tool for improvement from what I see in working with Ms. Kuntz. Obviously, from the results, they were very alarming to me. This is the first time I've really got to sit down and take a look at them. And you'll notice in our recommendations, if you would go to the next slide, please, that is the top recommendation, is that this needs to be made a priority. And you'll see the steps that we're taking there. This is going to be a topic of discussion throughout the year, making sure that our principals realize that this data is valuable. It needs to be accessible. They need to take it seriously, so that we can get back information to improve the quality of the GATE program in our district. The next piece is professional learning. Again, we have a few things going on with professional learning. One of them that I'd like to highlight is that our GATE teachers will be participating in 3 days during the year, full days with Ms. Kuntz, who is a pretty well-respected trainer in the area of gifted and talented education, so that teachers are getting the same access to quality professional learning. We had not previously provided our teachers that were in GATE cluster classes this type of training. It was primarily centralized in our magnet program, but we're going to open up the doors so that all teachers will have access. All GATE cluster teachers will have access to everything from the intro to well, I guess the 101 for GATE teachers, and they know all the symbols and the icons and what have you, and they can all start to share projects that are going on throughout the district, because there's a lot of great things going on in our district. We haven't had the time, we haven't made the time or the commitment to make sure that these ideas are shared and spread throughout the district. Additionally, communication is a big piece. Ms. Kuntz, with the support of various district staff, has begun translation and interpretation services at all of our GATE DAC meetings. We had the first one in October. We have increased bilingual education, communication, with parents via flyers. We're working with Just Communities and Bilingual Parents to improve parent communications relations. And we also are trying to collaborate with other districts to acquire and exchange translated materials. What was happening in our elementary GATE meetings was that our coordinator would bring all these great articles and what have you, but they were all in English, and so our Spanish-speaking parents weren't having access to the same amount of information. So we're reaching out to other districts that have translated articles, and we're trying to bring that to our folks that are here in town, and we're hoping that it helps inform our Spanish-speaking parents. And lastly, a piece that we talked about last year was a GATE identification. I wanted to let you all know that just today we're talking about the contract to blanket test all of our second graders in the district this year for GATE testing. We're going to be using a new online version of the COGAT 7. We'll be one of the first in the state to be utilizing this system. We will be working closely with Todd and his team and our coordinator, our testing coordinator, to make sure this happens as smoothly as possible. She has contacted the principals to give them timelines, but that's getting off to a really good start, and I hope to be able to report back the data real soon. You'll see the other pieces of continuing to refer EL students in grades 3 through 5 for testing, and we really want to simplify the referrals for grades 3 through 5. Continue to notify all parents of gate criteria and information describing characteristics of both EL and non-EL gate children, and that was sent home in homework folders. So this next year is going to, again, be a big focus on ensuring that these survey results are representative of all of our parents and students and teachers and principals, and hopefully, well, not hopefully, next year we will have a much more robust and comprehensive survey results to provide to the board. Any questions?
Thank you. Ms. Edelson?
Did I understand you to say the second graders will be taking the test online?
That's correct.
Huh. And will that be like in a computer center?
That's correct.
School?
It's interesting.
Yeah. We'll see. Mr. Herron?
Yeah, I would just comment that I received copies of a lot of survey results from the standpoint of comments by parents, comments by educators for the strengths and weaknesses, quite lengthy, and I really think there's a heck of a lot of information in that, and in some cases more important than the results of the survey. I think reading every one of those comments and getting a feel for what parents and educators are thinking can be invaluable to staff, and there's just a lot of powerful information in there.
Yes. We actually looked at a lot of those details to come up with the recommendations we came up with. The survey data alone didn't give us the information we needed to make the recommendations for the professional learning that needs to take place. So a lot of it came from, the qualitative data came from their comments.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, board? All right, thank you. So this concludes our conference agenda item. We do have one item that we need to go back to from consent, which was E4, the minutes for September 24th, 2013. And I believe Mr. Herron pulled that.
Yes. It's a minor change, but in reality, it's a big issue. Over the years, I've noticed many times we get a policy to approve, a change is made in the motion, but the minutes just come through saying approved without mention of what that minor little change was. And then years later, somebody goes back to the record and they see the agenda that has one set of documents in it, and they see the policy that might be different, but there's no way to tell why it's different. And I'll use the example. In policy 5144, in front of us were changes that included 3 words through weekly email. And when I made the motion to approve 5144, it was with those 3 words being deleted. But in the motion that's here, it just says that I made the motion, it was approved. Now, if somebody went back to look at what was on the agenda, what was approved, what exists, there's no way to understand why what exists is different than what was on the agenda on September 24th. So I'm going to make a motion to approve 5144, or approve the minutes of September 24th with the addition regarding 5144 that the motion include the elimination of 3 words through weekly email, so that the record will show in the future why the policy that is on the books is different than what was given to us at the meeting.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 5-0. And so we'll definitely note that about making sure that future motions, that any modifications are reflected in the minutes. All right, so this concludes our meeting. Do we have any future agenda items? We have one more meeting left this calendar year. Anything you'd like to see? All right, so yes.
I noticed that, number one, I'm very happy that we're doing a survey of parents for the healthy kids. But I noticed in one case, one school, added the parameter that the survey time is October 1st through June 30th, 11 months. And as I've discovered, that's West Ed saying, okay, you can have this much time. We're doing the students and the parents, students and the teachers, sometime before the end of this calendar year. I'd like, when that information goes out to the parents, I'd like to see a similar timeline. Do this now and not give them 11 months to do it. I'd like to see the results coincide to the students and the teachers. So if you could give us some comment, Dr. Cash, in your weekly letter as to how we are looking at that, and there's no rational reason to give them till June 30th to do a survey, I don't think, in my opinion.
All right. All right. Anything else? So with that, we will adjourn.
So what's the bracelet?